Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. I hope you're all well. Apologies for the late start, slight technical hitch at my end, but we're all good. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport. We can be found predominantly on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Search for the Hard Compound on any of those. Come and join us for all the motorsport fun. We're here just to share a love of motorsport, whether it be from F1 to touring cars, IndyCar, GT racing, bikes, rallying, NASCAR, anything that's loud and noisy and goes fast. We do our best to cover it, and we do that in the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, breaking news, any like new liveries. Anything we can shake a stick at. As I said, we try and cover it as best we can. We do that with 3 written articles every day in the morning, lunchtime and evening. They get put out here in the UK on our Facebook, Instagram and our Twitter. So do come and give us a follow. We'd love to have you on board. Excuse me. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live video interviews just like this one. And just like this one, they are streamed live. On our YouTube, so search for the Hard Compound over on there. Come and give us a follow, and on our Facebook and on our Twitter. Our videos are automatically saved in the video section on Facebook and in the live section on YouTube. And we've done nearly 150 of these, I think, which is pretty amazing, as they were never on the radar when we started. I won't name all the guests, but we've had some absolutely fantastic ones in the past. We've spoken with like legends such as Mr. Mario Andretti, Mr. Jackie Ickx, with John Watson, Hans Stuck, Chip Ganassi, Brian Redman, touring car legends from the past, guys like Jason Plato and Rob Gravitt and Frank Sittner, and Steve Soper. We've spoken with David Brabham and Stefan Johansson, Derek Warwick. We've spoken with Siegfried Storr. We've had Alex Caffey and most of the British touring car grid and W Series racers and many, many fantastic guests from across the board. So I've been very fortunate. So do go and check them out, but don't do it just yet because I'm about to stop talking. And we also have a fantastic guest joining us this evening. He has won fairly well-known races in Bathurst. And around the Nurburgring. He's raced in the Daytona 24 Hours. He's a single-seater champion. And he's raced in GT cars all over the world. And I'm very jealous because some of them are absolutely fantastic. He's also a very nice chap. So we're going to bring him in right now, live from Barcelona, which is very cool. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Adam Christodoulou.
Hello.
Adam, how are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks.
Good, good.
That was one hell of a list.
Oh, yeah, I kind of get mental block. There's been a lot of people have come on. I've been very lucky. And you have now joined the list. We are obviously getting better.
That's brilliant.
Clearly.
Typically now the Wi-Fi is going a bit funny. Oh, what's up? He's got dark as well. Hold on a second.
This is the...
It's typical, this is. Anyway. Here we are, so it should be good. Can you hear me okay? Oh no, don't do this now. Rich, can you hear me? Oh, there we go, we're back.
This is the joy of live streaming. Isn't that perfect? Just as we come on live, it all drops out. But never mind. We're
back 2 seconds. Let me just make sure no others are on my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no problem at all. No worries.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
How's it going?
Well, this is fun, isn't it? We started very well. I don't know if you can see, folks. My actual screen of Adam has actually frozen. Could you just hit refresh at your end, Adam? Hopefully, I'll be able to see you then.
Where do I even find refresh?
Just refresh the old browser and it should work.
Hold on 2 seconds. Let's go.
See, this is why we do things live. It's
so if I refresh, it says leave page, stay in.
There we are. Right. Don't worry, folks. We are going to be okay in a minute. This is the joy of live streaming. This doesn't normally happen, but we'll be fine. And I'll bring Adam in once he's reconnected. Here we are. Look, Right, let's press the
Are
button.
we working?
Hey, there we go. I was just saying, this is the joy of live streaming, isn't it? You don't get these on these pre-recorded ones.
Perfect.
Far more
Right,
fun.
there we go.
Yes. Anyway, right. How are you? You're out in Barcelona.
I'm good, thanks. Now everything's working. I'm good. So, yeah, just in Barcelona at the moment. My girlfriend lives over here, and so I spend as much time as I can get away with over here in between racing and testing and coaching and doing other things. And so, yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, fantastic. As I say, there was nothing wrong with good old Blighty, of course, but yeah, nice to be out there. Firstly, thank you very much for coming on, having a chat. We've obviously we spoke about this a few weeks back at Goodwood. Apologies for grabbing you when you were going for a drink or a snack or something. But no, it was good to see you. Thank you for the Coca-Cola as well in your little.
These are your sponsor.
Yes, Coca-Cola, get on board. You know, they're doing stuff.
Goodwood was really cool. It's always great to get invited back to go there and yeah, show off whatever cars we're bringing. And so this year I was there in the AMG GT3 Raw spec, which is it's actually a customized car from Race Service. So it's got straight through exhaust on the thing. It's got no restrictors in it, so it's super loud. All the interiors customized as well, painted, which generally in a race car you don't get. And yeah, it's just a cool piece of kit. And I guess it's the noise of the thing, which is the I guess the eye opener that catches everyone's attention, because compared to even though race cars generally are loud, this thing is just another level. And yeah, if you give it a little blip on the throttle whilst going past people, it generally people jump out their skin, which is it's a shame race cars aren't like that anymore, because I guess we've kind of got used to quieter forms of motorsport now.
Yes, we have, and it's just a bit of a shame. You know, I missed the days of going to a circuit. And I remember I went to F1 qualifying in '88 at Silverstone, and one car went past, and I remember my dad had said, "Oh, it can't be that loud." I think it was a Minardi went past, and he sort of skulked off to get some ear defenders because it was.
Yeah, sadly, it's like anything. There's just more restrictions on motorsport and stuff, and it's a bit of a shame. Like, it blows my mind sometimes. Like places like Donington have a noise restriction, yet it is right on the edge of a live airport, and it's just like, hold on a sec. Like, surely they make a lot more noise than the race cars do, and they can't have 3 loud days in a row, which is generally why they'll do like a Thursday test, they have the Friday off, and then they go Saturday, Sunday race weekend, because whatever regulations have been made, they can't do 3 loud days in a row.
Yeah, it feels a bit odd. I mean, that has just put me in mind. I went to the like Download Rock and sort of Metal Festival a few years in a row. It was 2007 in the middle of the circuit, and I think it was Iron Maiden were on, and they said, "Oh, we've got a 10:30 curfew." I don't know why. It might be because we might wake the planes up, which is absolutely true. But it is what it is. You know, hopefully we'll get back some noise some point soon. Yes. Anyway, folks, as I said, as I always say, if you have any comments or questions, pop them in the comment section. If it's working, we will see them in real time and we'll work them in. I guess the best place to start, though, is right at the start, I guess. Where did your kind of love and interest of motorsport start from? So,
actually, to be honest, it was more my dad that was into motorsport more than I was. Like, basically, my dad had this bright yellow helmet, and so as a kid, of course, we put it on and run around the house. And then basically, as soon as I was 7 years old, he got me a proper fitting helmet. I had an AGV back then, plain white, and took me to the garage at the end of the driveway, and in the garage was this go-kart, and it's just like, wow, what's that? And so that next weekend we went karting, and of course, I wish I could remember exactly how it was the first time I went, but to be honest, we started going most weekends, and we had a little VW transporter which he had for work. So my dad and his brother, they're in the clothing industry, so basically at the weekend they make sure, obviously, no deliveries, put a cart in the back, and off we went to the little local circuit, which was Chasewater. Originally, I'm from a little village called Shenstone near Lichfield, and Chasewater was about 10 minutes away, and so it had about 5 corners. And so, we'd go there and practice most weekends, and then... Sorry, there's a bit of noise outside. And then from there, actually, after about half a year's testing, I didn't really see where it was going. I didn't know much about it, but as a 7-year-old, I wanted to go and play football with my mates. And so I'd make 1 or 2 excuses not to go, just because I guess I wanted to do other things. But as soon as I went to my first race, basically the weekend after my 8th birthday, I remember we had to do the license, and I literally just skimmed through it like by the skin of my teeth. And so, thankfully, and ended up, did my first race and finished 6th overall and won the novice trophy. And I guess, as they say, the rest was history. I couldn't wait for the next weekend to go racing again. So I took my little trophy. I've still got it, or my parents have still got it. It's at the house. It's a little steering wheel, and it's got like 2 hands, and it looks like it's made out of brass or something. And so,
cool.
Still got my first trophy from Shennington.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Hold on, 1996, I think that was.
Wow. 28 years ago. It doesn't feel like that long ago. It's quite depressing. I mean, I was just going to say that you must have got the bug pretty quickly, and you said that you couldn't wait to go racing again. I mean, I guess that bug bit pretty hard, and you thought you wanted to go and compete more and try and
for sure.
move
forward. I think as soon as I got rewarded for finishing like first rookie and 6th overall, then at that point, like, that's when I got the bug. Like, I think it was the reward. So I think it was almost, it doesn't matter what sport I would have been involved in, because everyone always goes like, what sport would I have done if I wasn't racing? And I'm like, I have no idea. But I think whatever it was, as soon as I'd have, I guess, got a trophy or whatever, then I'd have been hooked at whatever it was. Dad happened to just choose the most expensive one that was. But in the end, like, I think what I realized was we ended up, he's lived, I guess, his like childhood dream through me, like doing all the karting, making it into cars. And so he tries to come to as many races as he can. And he was in karting, he was the engineer. My older cousin, Jamie, he was my mechanic, and I was the driver. And so my older cousin, basically, when I started when I was 7, I wasn't strong enough to pick the cart up to put it on the trolley, because I must have been, 30 kilos or something, and the thing had to weigh, there's a minimum weight of 95 kilos, and I wasn't strong enough to pick the thing up. So my older cousin came along to help, and he was my mechanic for the 10 years of karting that we did, and we had a super successful career. And then he continued doing that, and I went into cars eventually, and he's still doing it now, looking after drivers. So he's been involved in motorsport for, I guess, 28 years as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's always nice when you hear like the stories of the old like cliche like lad and dad thing. But I mean, there's so many people that we've spoken with that have said that it was just them and their dad, or mum and dad, or brother, or whatever.
It was back then. It was.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real shame now. I think it's a real shame now that, sadly, the budgets and everything have got a bit out of control. That basically, I think it's more the case of you go to a racetrack and you drop the kid off and they go racing, because I think unless you're now with one of these huge teams, like the teams basically, the big teams bought, I guess, 100 engines or whatever, tested them all, figured out which are the best engines, right, which are the best chassis, and they, I guess, did all the R&D to get the best of whatever equipment. And unless you're with one of those teams, you don't have the time or the energy as you're trying to make your career to do that now. So I think I was quite lucky that, I guess, I think this has changed a lot probably within the last 10 years. So I think we were towards the end of it being lad and dad, and then it just evolved into bigger and bigger teams. And the budgets I hear now are just outrageous. Like, you can go car racing for cheaper compared to what I've heard people are spending now doing karting, which is wild.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's come up recently is this like Toka Junior package in support of the British Touring Car Championship. And they're saying you're looking at a couple of $100,000 for for a full season with everything all in. And there's been uproar about it in some quarters, and people are saying, well, it's not that much more than going karting, so you may as well get into a car.
Oh, is that with like the Ginetta Juniors and what's the Tucker package now? Like I know the Minis, I think, are doing it.
Yeah, you got the Mini, you got the JCWs and the Coopers and the Minis. The Ginettas have gone over to the British GT support, which figures. But I think like the Legends series come on for some rounds, and what they're called. Well, that's another series. I forgot what they're called now.
But I think in the end, like the British
Radical,
the Radical UK that's the biggest championship with the biggest following and I guess the most TV coverage. And because it is exciting to watch, it can be a little bit. There's a lot of elbowing and rubbing and bumping, which somehow I was going to say they get away with. They don't always get away with it, but of course that makes it very exciting. But you can't really do that in GTs because there's a lot more carbon parts and and the car's generally a bit more expensive, and GT3s have a bit more power. The power to weight ratio is bigger with the GT3 cars, and so I think in the end, obviously, each championship's trying to, I guess, navigate to give the drivers the best amount of driving for bang for their buck, and so the juniors have gone to that. But the junior Ginettas are great, like starting championship into cars because we've got like 100 horsepower. They weigh, I think, 900 kilos, and they're a perfect little car for that. Anyone that wins in that generally tends to make quite a good career for themselves.
Yeah, and I think the obvious one in most recent years is also like Lando Norris, who's gone on. He's just won at the weekend, and he was in Ginettas, and I think like Sophia Flörsch has done it. And yeah, there's plenty that have gone on. It's a cracking series. But obviously that didn't sort of form part of your formative years, which we'll come to shortly. I just want to go back quickly to the karting world. I mean, obviously 2001 Kart Masters British Grand Prix was your first sort of major success. Another thing that was it around then that you thought this is what I want to do, or this is what I can do with my life? I can make a career out of this, perhaps. Or was it shortly after that, maybe?
I don't really know. Like, I guess at that point, like, I was just going karting, one, because I loved it, and two, we were very successful. And it was one of those that, so when me and my cousin would turn up, we had our dad's company was called Roman Originals, and so we'd turn up in the Roman van, and of course you could just see people like, oh no, because like generally me and my cousin both raced, and we were pretty dominant whatever we raced, and so at that point it was one of those that we were racing, I don't know, 45 weekends a year back then, and so it was just flat out, and it was so much more intense than any other racing, because like during a race weekend you get like a 10-minute practice, you have maybe 50 minutes off, and then another 10-minute practice, and that's how like the testing went, and then the next day there might be qualifying and then the race, and it was really cool. I don't really know. I guess in the karting stage, you're just like, right, where do you want to get to? Right, my dream is Formula One. Like that's almost, I think, every driver's.
That's almost a given, isn't it?
But well, yeah, like I guess it's like anything. You always, especially when you're young, you aim for the top of absolutely everything, because in the end, I guess you don't know the complications of what stops you getting there. Which obviously in motorsport, generally funding is one of the biggest issues, and sadly, there is no way around that. There's a few scholarships out there, like Red Bull Junior support drivers, and now some of the other teams also have juniors as well, but generally the initial investment is family funded, I guess. And so my dad basically, and I guess in a way my dad always said, right, my job was the racing and the going quick bit, and then his job was, right, let's try and grow the family business as fast as possible, because he was like, right, want any chance of him getting there, like we don't know how easy sponsorship is. So and in the end, I think that made him a better business person as well, because he would go into work and he'd be like, I guess in the end he would delegate, right, you're doing this, you're doing that, and in the end he just, I guess it kind of helped him, or it gave him the motivation to grow the company bigger and bigger. And so
this is sort of nice that it kind of helped the family as well, with that kind of carrot, to do well with the racing and everything else like that.
Well, that's it. It's the money's crazy, and so in the end, that is the biggest thing that stops drivers progressing, and the karting pretty much paid for itself, because if you won championships or certain races like Kart Masters, you'd win free tires, free entries into other races, some chassis, like, and fuel and stuff. And I don't know whether it's still the same now. I don't think it is. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But it was quite self-sufficient when we were.
Yeah, there's kind of ways that you can mitigate costs and things, which is, by being successful, things like that. One thing that I want to touch, I'm not going to go on for too long. I think you said we were okay to talk about this. There was an issue with, was it back in 2006 with your karting? You were basically, you got banned and fined for, I don't want to use the word cheating because it's a horrible word, and I don't, you probably weren't aware of it, but there was a problem, wasn't it, with your kart was found to not be legal. I was just wondering when that came to light, what did you think? When it must.
Well, it's one of those, like it, so in the end, what it was I was racing in Rotax. We had I guess between my dad and I guess our engine builder at the time, then managed to figure out how to I guess well, they created an offset crank pin, so it just meant that the timing changed slightly. And it's one of those. Obviously, in the end, I had it in, I guess, a few of the engines, and I think maybe my dad just got a little bit greedy because he was also renting the engines out to the drivers in the category below. And actually, in the end, that paid for quite a bit of the racing. And so it was one of those. Every driver is always trying to, or every father and driver is always trying to get whatever advantage. And obviously people throw a lot of money at it. Like, there was a bunch of engines that all the way through the season, like, we get to the end of cadet and then you move into TKM, and of course everyone's like, well, those engines, like, you're not just going to hold on to them, and so of course you end up selling them, and I guess they kind of go to the highest bidder at that point, and then you go to TKM, and the same goes, you get to the end of that category before you move up into the next, and then the guys that are going for the championship end up paying for that for them to try and get there. And so in the end, I guess that created a little bit of a business out of it, that we just rented the engines. And so in the end, I guess he went too far with it. But I guess it was just out of the love of trying to give me the best opportunity. And of course, as a kid, your dad's your hero, and so you just go with whatever it is. But of course, like, I don't like, you don't know much about it. You just assume that everything that happens everyone knows that everyone's pushing everything to the limit. But I think I was 14 or 15. Like, in the end, it's an engine. It's like, right, that's my best engine. That's going on the chassis. But the internal bits of it, like now I understand it all. But back then I was just a kid and going racing, and so it's just like that's how it was. And so it was one of those that it's. In the end, we ended up with quite a punishment for it. I wasn't allowed to race for a whole season. And so I was on the bench with that. And we looked at options like, maybe do I go to America and get my American license and do that? But in the end, I think it was the right decision. That Dad was like, well, no, I think we just have to...
just sort of ride it out again.
Yeah, ride it out. We've been punished for it. But it's funny, like, obviously we got caught with that. But then suddenly my top 4 or 5 competitors, suddenly they also dropped off the pace. It's like, hold on a sec, what did you guys have?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so, it's one of those, and it happens in, sadly, I guess it happens in every form of motorsport. Like, Red Bull have been so dominant the last 3-4 years, and then suddenly they've just lost all pace. And then, of course, in the last few weeks, it's come out that there might have been this like adjustive or adaptable like braking system that they may have had, which suddenly been ruled out because it wasn't within the rules. And it's like, well, how long have they had that? And then I think, was it Honda a few years ago ended up with like an extra fuel tank or something that they ran? I can't remember when that was, but I remember when they got caught with that, I think they got a 1 or 2 race ban with that. But also, funnily enough, Ferrari ended up going slow or not being as competitive the next few races.
Pattern wasn't there after it.
I guess people and teams are pushing the boundaries all the time to try and get whatever advantage they can. And I think that happens in every single sport. And I guess in the end, obviously, like I said, he went too far and it hindered us. But what did happen was they took all the engines off me, and we ended up doing a few races after still, because I was able to finish that season before I guess the court case came around, and so they took all the engines off us. So I was running on other people's equipment, and even when I was on that, I still won the Champions of Champions at Putmore Park and a few other races before I moved into seniors. I did one or two. I think I did one race in seniors, and then that's when the ban came in, and it literally came in the week before the first race of the season and finished the week after the last race of the season. So I had a whole year out, and so what I ended up doing is I became a bit more social, I guess. Started going out and doing a few other things, and then once a month I'd go over to Ireland and just test a Formula Renault for a day or two. Just rented a little circuit there.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan. That's where was it Martin Donnelly and Kenny Atchison and all those guys? They cut their teeth. I remember we spoke with them. Cracking little circuit.
Yeah. It's almost like a triangle, this circuit. And so so just went there, just went testing. It had a chicane in the middle of the back straight, just go there once a month and just do a test or so, and just in preparation for, I guess, the next stage after that, after I got my license back, was to move into karts.
I guess it was like the natural thing to do, obviously, with what had gone on in karts. But you'd won everything in karts, you'd shown your pace, and you were ready for the step up. Was it the Formula Renault Winter Series? I think you first sort of went car racing properly. How did all that come about? Because obviously we've talked about budgets, and there's quite a big budget shift, isn't there, going up to that level? Was there? I mean, because I've spoken to a lot of people on here, and there's so many of them say there was and then I met so and so, and they really helped them out. I mean, was there anyone like that on your start into cars that really helped you out, sponsorship or anything like that?
So, no, not really. To be honest, like at that stage, obviously, I would have been, I guess, 16. So, still just trying to stand on my own 2 feet, just doing whatever it was, like just trying to remain fit and get ready for moving into cars. And like probably 90% of most drivers, that part was funded by family. My dad was funding all of that, and I picked up one or two sponsors that paid little bits, but in the end my dad was still paying probably 90% of it. And that was, he always said, that's my side to worry about. You do the racing bit and concentrate on that and your fitness, and I'll worry about trying to figure out how to pay for everything. And so it's funny, like in my head I always say I moved into cars in 2007, but you're right, I ended up doing, I think it's 4 races of the Winter Series, which you had to do to get your national license to then go and do the British Championship. But before that happened, I went to do the 4 races, and I broke a drive shaft in one of them, and so I didn't have enough points to actually do the British Championship in 2007. So I ended up doing a race weekend in a Caterham. So it's like, right, okay, so it's just another car to drive in a little club race just to get 2 more signatures, because to upgrade your license, you got to do at least 6 races. And I was in this Caterham, and the thing had no power, so I literally qualified last, but all I had to do was finish anyway. Of course, the red mist got the better of me. The first race I went out and did my job, that's fine. Second race, I managed to get a good launch off the start. Turn 1, paddock bend at Brands Hatch. Turn 2, try and outbrake everyone, and just completely locked straight in the gravel. And that was the end of my race. So I didn't get my signature, of course. Dad goes absolutely nuts at this point. I don't think he was at that race weekend, but of course he loses it. So it's like, right, now what? So anyway, so in the end, actually, what I ended up doing was you could get one of your signatures by doing a marshalling day. And so that's what I went and did. So I think it must have been the start of 2007. I think it was like the 2nd of January. like 2 days after New Year's, they always did like a New Year's week race at Mallory Park. Mallory Park back then was like half an hour away from my house. And so that's what I did. I ended up driving to Mallory Park. It was absolutely freezing, I remember. And and of course they gave me a boiler suit, and there I was marshalling for the day. So I was at turn 1. And of course, I just remember it being absolutely freezing. And like, it's hats off to those guys that sit and stand there in all the weather conditions. And they do it because they love the sport and they love being there. And they're all volunteers. Like, I believe the majority of them are all volunteers. And so without those guys, we wouldn't be allowed to race. And so it was one of those that I went and did my day. And I remember, like, obviously you're watching the race basically all day. And then eventually in one of the races, there was a huge crash at turn 1. And there was a little, like, classic Mini involved, and like a Ford Fiesta or something. And the radiator's, like, around halfway across the track and stuff. So, of course, the safety car comes out and we've all got to run across and, like, sweep up and grab the radiator and stuff, make sure the drivers are all okay. And so that's how I ended up getting my 6th signature, so I could go racing the next year.
That's cool. I like that.
In Formula
I like that kind of getting your hands dirty, just to kickstart things a bit. That's fantastic. Love that. But yeah, big shout out to the Orange Army, as they're known. The marshals and the stewards, absolutely superb bunch of people. I've seen a guy called John Kane tunes into most of these. He's a marshal up at Knock Hill, so big thumbs up to him and all his crew. So you got I didn't know about that, which is pretty cool. But when you moved up to the Formula Renault, I mean, was it a big step up? Because as I said, there's been a lot of people that have gone from karts into heaters, or they've gone in. Oh, hello. They've gone. This is good, isn't it? We'll blame Spanish internet connections. We're back in a minute. Fascinating. Didn't know you could get a signature by being a marshal. Isn't that good? Not sure if it's still the case, but certainly something to consider. Oh, there we are. Look. There we are. It's another. That's another euro in the meter. Happy days. Are we? Yes. Well, okay. Good stuff. So yes, when you got behind the wheel of Formula Renault, was it a big step up from karts? I mean, because I've spoken to a few people that have gone into the Junior Saloon Car Championship, and they've had to get used to, like, roll and depth perception and things like that. You went into single seaters and into Caterhams. I mean, how did you find the step up? Did it feel like a big go-kart, or was it a real jump?
It was huge. It's completely different. So suddenly, like, I guess the major difference is the size of the vehicle. In a kart, you are the biggest part of that machine, and so you end up leaning into the corners to, like, try and get it to jack a rear wheel and stuff, just so that it doesn't push too much, or so it doesn't bog down coming out the corner. And so you're manipulating that with the weight of your body. Whereas in a car, like, you're strapped in, the engine weighs more than you. And so so the biggest thing in a car is then you're using the brake for the weight transfer. Obviously, you brake, the suspension goes forward. In a car, you don't have suspension. So obviously, when you brake, the thing doesn't really dive, but it does almost lock the rear, which can help it rotate. And so suddenly in a car, you've got brakes on the front and on the rear. So if you brake too hard, you lock the front and it'll push. Especially in a Formula car, you've got no ABS. And then suddenly you've got gears to contend with as well. And so, of course, going up the gears is easy. In a Formula Renault, you're just like pulling gears. It's a sequential. But on the downshifts, you're having to hit the brake. So I drove it like a go-kart. You use the clutch to pull away. And then once you were moving, then you just drove, like, you moved your foot over to the middle pedal and you just drove it like a go-kart. But on the downshifts, you've got to match the, like, wheel speed to the engine speed. And so on the downshifts, you're hard on the brake, but you're also blipping the throttle each time you go down the gear, just to spike the engine rev, so you don't get, they call it gearbox chatter, where the rear wheels lock up. And so you're trying to reduce that, which is like an auto blip on a downshift now. And so it's a big jump, and getting used to that weight transfer is different. And of course, I was going testing, doing little bits in Ireland, but I was only was the only car ever on the track, and actually I've just remembered a story from when I was in Ireland. So my cousin used to come with me, my mechanic, Jamie. He used to come with me because I wasn't old enough to drive over there.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have my car license, but of course back then, every now and again it'd be like, right, let's just make sure that you can do gears correctly. So like we'd end up in a car park and like just go through the gears and stuff, and then every now and again it'd be like, right, okay, you can drive to the track. And so we're in this big X5 of Wayne Douglas's, and I'd be driving to the circuit and doing all the gears and everything, and so just as extra practice basically, and so just getting more like driving craft and understanding the size of the vehicle. I guess I would have been 16 at the time, and so
wow.
Just anything that we thought might give us an advantage for when the races started, we just went with it and did what we thought was best. And so I'm just trying to think, what was the original question again? Like,
oh my goodness, no, it was just back to the size of the car and stuff and getting used to it.
We've got a few comments.
Yeah, we've got a few coming in. I've just seen those have come in. Probably a slight delay. Hang on a minute. Okay, let's just do that quickly then.
This is quite a good one from David.
Yes, I did see that just pop up. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's his opinion or someone else's, or I don't know. But he says, why did you get labelled as arrogant by teams, and do you think that stopped your race career?
I don't remember being labelled arrogant, to be honest. I think, like, obviously, I was very confident. I'm assuming he's talking about when I was in cars.
Yes, I think it may well be.
I don't know. Like in the end, like the first year of my car career in Formula 1 in 2007, I was with back then it was called AKA Lamac.
Yes.
And then the second year, actually, it was the same team, but then it was a different sponsor, and then it became AKA Cobra. And so. No, sorry. So from the winter series to the first year, it went Lamac, and then it went to AKA Cobra, and then it was my 2008 season with them. That's when it became CRS Racing.
Yes.
And so Andrew Cacotti, he was the team manager of that. But I wouldn't have said I was ever arrogant, but I think I was always quietly confident in everything that I was going to do. And I guess in the end, I was able to be quietly confident because I've been quite successful in everything I've raced in up to that point. And so I'm intrigued to know more information on that, David, if he's still watching.
Yeah, if we have any info, that, but yeah, I'd like to know about it. I hadn't heard it either, but who knows? Who knows? Okay, before we move on, I'm going to get to Katie Eames because she tunes in and she's got a couple of her favourite questions. I'm going to ask the second one, and I'll ask the first one a bit later on.
Okay.
Favourite biscuit and favourite ice cream flavour?
Favourite biscuit.
Katie is known for this. We know Katie. She's great.
Oh, so I'm going to have to say a custard cream. And the reason I say this is because me and my cousin, so we worked for our dads for many years. At least 10 years we were working for our dad's company. And basically that's what we'd have like at every break time. Like between me and my cousin, we'd go for a pack of custard creams every day.
Wow.
But not like a double pack of custard creams. So we'd probably have 10 a day. And I wish I could do that now, but obviously I'm a little older and the old metabolism slowed down a little bit. And so sadly, but so what we used to do is we used to go training from 8 until 10 every morning. And then we were meant to go straight to work after. And then we'd work from then until basically whenever our dads would go home, which was around 6:37. And so we just did that every day. And when we first started working there, I think we were earning like £350 a month. And of course, we thought it was great because suddenly we've gone from having no money to 350 quid. And we're like, oh my God, we're millionaires, we're rich. And so suddenly, what do I do with 350 quid? I remember, I think I spent my first paycheck on, Ricky was old enough to drive back then. And so we were basically doing deliveries. And at one of the shopping centres, there was this massive beanbag called a butter bag. And And so I managed to negotiate, and I thought I did such a good job of negotiating because it was meant to be like £356 or something. And I managed to knock the £6 off so I could buy it. And in my head, that was a win. So I bought a massive beanbag with my first paycheck. So,
Brilliant. I love that. Brilliant.
But actually, going back to the work day, what we would do is we'd go training from 8 until 10. And then Ricky would come from his gym, come and pick me up. And I'd have ordered 2 lasagnas with curly fries. So we'd have lunch, I guess, just after 10, like 10:30. We'd have that. And then we'd go into work for an hour or so. And then, of course, the tuck van would come. So we'd order more food from there. And I have no idea where we put all this food. But I guess it's just because we were training so much. And I guess we were teenagers, so you're growing. So your body's just burning food for the fun of it. And so we used to have like 4 or 5 meals a day. And like, of course, during lunch, we'd like order 1.5 sandwiches. Like we'd order 3 sandwiches between the 2 of us, because then, of course, at afternoon break, we'd then split the sandwich between us whilst also eating our way through custard creams all day as well. And so anyway, so that's how we got to the custard cream bit. But what was it? Wait, hold on. There was favourite biscuit.
And it was favourite ice cream flavour.
By
the way, the custard creams have got a thumbs up from Katie. They're good Dunkin' coffee. Absolutely agree with that.
What has been the most popular biscuit on the podcast, do we think?
I'm not sure how many have doubled up, actually. There's been... we had
Katie's been keeping track of who...
Yeah, I should go back, keep a little chart. Excel sheet or something. Caitlin Wood, Aussie, she went with like Tam Tams that they have out there. I think someone controversial, Garibaldi, controversial move. Garibaldi, someone said a bourbon biscuit. Someone said, I think one of them said caramel digestives. I think that was Abby Eaton. Yeah, there was all kinds of.
Yeah.
They are good.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. And then flavoured ice cream. What do I like? I quite like the mint ones, but I wouldn't say it's my favourite. What's my favourite? So like the cheesecake flavour ones, where there's basically more than one flavour within the ice cream. Yeah. I don't like just having just one solid flavour. I like having different flavours. Like it doesn't matter even when it comes to food. Like I love eating tapas, where you're just nibbling at lots of different things. Or like if you go for an Indian, like you just everyone's just trying everyone else's. So I really enjoy just trying everything.
Yeah, dipping in. Good stuff. We like that.
Very important question.
No, never rule anything out. Happy days. No, good stuff. Well, thank you, Katie. That's very good. We have digressed a bit. I'll say hello to Sharon on Twitter. Hello, Sharon. She's a big fan of West Surrey Racing, I believe. Yes, we like West Surrey Racing. Good stuff. Right, snacks. Back to the cars. We've done the snacks in the
Hold on, we've got Ronaldo.
Hang on. Yes, Eiffel Ronaldo. Hello, mate. Yeah, he is the resident Nurburgring expert. Yeah. Follow him on Twitter, folks. Eiffel Ronaldo. He loves it. He always F1 and stuff. Give him a follow. He's a good lad. Evening. I still don't know his real name, but hello, Ronaldo. Good man. Nurburgring. We're going to come to the Nurburgring very shortly because you've won there. But yes, just to sort of get back to the old noisy car things. That sort of second year, I want to say you won the championship essentially, didn't you? In that 2008 year, your first championship in cars, and having obviously you did the full season in 07 and you got used to the cars and stuff like that. Did you expect to go so well in 2008? I mean, were there signs that you could really get this championship head on?
That was the plan. So in the end, everything we did, especially moving into cars, and we were quite close with Paul de Rister and Louis de Rister, and he gave us, I think, some really solid advice. It's like, and actually this started from karting that he gave us this advice, that I got to the end of my cadet career, I guess at the age of 11, and you can do it until you're 12. And my dad was like, right, okay, we're thinking of moving up into the next category. And he was like, why would you do that? It's like, well, it's the next thing, like progressing. It's like, yeah, but I finished, I think it was 5th that year. It's like, yeah, but you haven't won it. Like, what's the rush to do that? Learn to win and fight for the wins and all of that, and then move up into the next category. And in the end, I think spending that extra year in cadets really helped that, because the next year I won the championship. And then the next year I moved into Minimax and I won that championship. And then I moved into Junior Max and I won that championship. And in the end, just spending that extra year just learning how to deal with the pressure of winning meant that generally all the way through my career, I was always in a position where I was winning. And it's sad when you see so many drivers that could potentially be really good jumping into the next category because we want to be the youngest, but they end up doing like not average, but they never actually win the championship, which they could have because they've just moved up too soon. And I think in the end, I think like looking back at my career records, I ended up winning like between the GT Open plates, the PFI GP plates, and the championships. I ended up winning seven of them in total.
Wow.
In karting, and I think I ended up with over 250 wins out of the 400 plus trophies that I ended up with, and I think it was just from sticking in that category for one more year. And of course, like you're doing 40 plus races a year, so there's obviously lots of opportunity to develop and to learn all of that and to deal with the pressure. And then it was the same with cars that we always knew, right, okay, Formula Renault, it's going to be a 2-year project, and then Formula 3, that'll be a 2-year project, and then GP2 back then will be a 2-year project, and then obviously hopefully to F1. And so the first year in Formula Renault, I didn't have a win, but I ended up finishing 4th overall.
Yeah.
And it was one of those that, right, well, from there, like the three drivers in front of me, they all moved out of and moved into Formula 3 or whatever direction their career was taking them. So of course at that stage it's like, well, the expectation is to win the championship. That's the only goal. And so and it went really well. Like I think we ended up winning 3 out of the first 4 races, and like I remember going to Rockingham. That was a dream weekend where I just ended up quickest in both practices, quickest in qualifying, won both races, and got fastest lap. It's just like one of those dream weekends where everything we put the car on the ground and the thing was just a rocket ship. And so, and that season I ended up winning, I think it was 7 of the 20 races in the end. And so, and basically ended up, I can't remember how many podiums it was. It might have been like 14 podiums or something. 14 or 15 podiums, and it was just being consistent. And I think that's one thing that always, I don't know why, but my consistency always seemed to be really good with whatever I was doing. So like I was just able to smash out the same lap times all the time. And I think that was also from karting, probably just from the amount of repetition from karting. We'd go practicing every Friday and Saturday, and then obviously race on Sundays. And so, and I think I was able to bring that into cars when I eventually moved into cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And that year, I actually have got 15 podiums from my little research that I did. So there you go, 50. So that's from what the 20 odd races. The consistency was key, and the wins. We said that you won at as you say, you won at Rockingham and Brands and Thruxton and Croft, all different kinds of circuits as well, which was
Alton Park was a good one for me as well.
Yes, Alton Park and Brands, they're always the ones that come up. And obviously, you won the championship in the final round, fairly solid, 4th and 5th. Nice to have a title to celebrate, I guess, which is lovely. I did see though on the grid that year there was some decent names on there that you beat. Obviously, there was like Ollie Webb and Alex Sims, James Collado, who won some race for Ferrari last year. I can't think. Went on did Le Mans.
To be honest, it's really cool. Like now looking back at where the drivers and of course we all did race karts together and we moved through the categories together. So like seeing James Collado won Le Mans, and then Earl Bamber, I raced against him in karting, and then one of my biggest rivals in karting was Daniel Rowbottom, and he's now in touring cars.
Yeah, Robo's a good
and Simsy won Spa 24 the year that I won the Nurburgring 24, and it was just cool that like we're all obviously competing against each other, but between all of us we would there was always at least one of us that had won one of the big races.
Which is fantastic.
Which is cool to see.
It's good to see. One driver I do want to mention very quickly, though, who was on the grid that year was Henry Surtees, and we all know the very, very sad loss. And one of those, just a monumentally freak accident. I mean, with what happened at Brands Hatch with the wheel and everything, and that's why the Halo stuff came in. And did you know Henry well? I mean, any memories of him?
Yeah, I knew Henry pretty well. Like, I'd stayed at his house a few times. They were not too far from Brands, and so obviously it's when something like that happens, it's a huge shock. And for the people that don't know, basically one of the wheels came off another car, bounced down the track, and as he came around the corner, it basically hit the car, hit him in the head, and basically killed him on the spot. And obviously it's just a massive shock when you hear anything like that, and it's horrendous. And he was someone that I raced with. He was a year younger than me, and we'd race in the same team in karting, and and knew his dad very well. We stopped at his house a few times, like if we were down south, and so it was it was just a huge shock to hear anything like that happen. It was very rare that, like, every now and again bad things would happen, but it was very rare for it to happen to someone that you knew. But in the end, like, I guess it was a huge wake-up call for motorsport that, right, we need to make these things safer. And so in the end, I guess
set the wheels in motion
and Justin Wilson's accident, they ended up obviously eventually bringing out the Halo. And when you look at some of the incidents now, like, you just think, oh my God, like, if they didn't have the Halo now, that could have potentially been another driver, which it could have been another fatality. And so I'm glad that in the end they have done something about it to make it safer for everyone else, but it's a shame obviously that it wasn't done sooner. But we'd race karts together, and we had a great time. Like, he had his motorhome and his awning, and bless Henry, he obviously, his dad was an absolute legend, the only guy to win a world championship and 2 and 4 wheels. And I ended up going to the museum in America when I was racing in America. I'm just trying to think. Alabama. Yeah, there's a massive motorcycle museum there, and seeing actually quite a few of John Surtees motorbikes there is really, really cool. And every now and again you see his cars going up Goodwood and stuff with different drivers driving them, which is always lovely to see. But going back to karting, it was always funny. He had one mechanic working for him full time, and basically the mechanic's job was to make the cart as light as possible, because poor old Henry, bless him, he liked a biscuit. A biscuit question would have been good for him. So and of course, like, because at the end, as you get to the end of each category, you're obviously one of the bigger drivers in that category, and so you're having to really, like, look after your weight and all of that. But we'd come in, especially on cold days, we'd get into the back of the motorhome, a cup of tea, get our biscuit, dunk them in, and like, we'd just eat biscuits all day. and there wasn't any videos or anything to watch back then. There was no YouTube or anything. Like, we'd have our little bit of data that we had on the PI system, but there was no onboard footage or anything. In fact, it was only in Stars of the Future, every now and again, they'd have a camera that they'd bolt onto the cart just above, I guess, the around the brake caliper side, but there was no GoPros or anything back then. But so it's a real shame, because, like, he would have, I'm sure we would have potentially raced together in something at some point, but sadly,
just wasn't to be, unfortunately. It was just, as I say, one of those complete things, and you mentioned Justin Wilson. It's very similar. I think that was 10 years ago this week that happened.
I think it was. It's a massive shock every time you hear anything like that, because I guess once upon a time, obviously, cars were a lot more dangerous, and you look at some of the classic cars and you're just thinking, you guys are absolutely nuts that you drove these things. It's like, as awesome as the machines are, like, and I guess you see it in some of the car films that have come out, like the Niki Lauda film and all of that. And you just think, like he was saying, like, almost every few weekends, potentially someone didn't go home from the weekend because there was a fatality or something. But obviously, as things got safer, that reduced more and more. But when every now and again it does happen, and obviously it's a huge shock, and it's a real reality check.
Let's hope there's no more for a long time. Nice. It's nice to hear some nice memories about Henry as well. This is lovely to hear. just to sort of step forward, obviously you've won the championship, the Formula Renault Championship. Were you looking at other series in the UK or Europe? Because you ended up going over the pond to the Star Mazda Championship, Road to Indy. I'm a big IndyCar fan. Anyone who's tuned into this knows I shoehorn it in every opportunity. How did it come about, the move over to the States?
So originally, the plan was obviously to do Formula Renault. We were having meetings with McLaren at the time, so we were having a few meetings back then with. We had Anthony Hamilton was mine and my cousin's manager for a few months, and we were having a few meetings in there. And they're like, right, I remember going in, and they're like, if you can generate this amount of sponsorship, then we can help you. And at the time, I was earning I had a pay increase, so I was earning £500 a month working for my dad, and I was just like, right, all I need to do is try and generate another £194,000, and then they'll be able to help me. And I was like, how am I going to do that? Then also, how am I going to eat as well? And so anyway, sadly, in the end, it wasn't possible to generate that money. I think I always felt like I won the right championship, but at the wrong time with like 2008 credit crunch, money crisis.
Yeah,
everything was going wrong, and so in the end, went and did an F3 test, and I raced against Bottas a few times in the Winter Series, and I did a few Northern European races as well at the end of 2007, and we were pretty neck and neck with the racing. He won the European Championship when I won the British Championship. The plan was to go and race in F3 Europe the year after. And basically the test just went horribly wrong. It was a 2-day test, and the car kept breaking down. There was issues. And in the end, the team they weren't allowing me to compare the data to Bottas. And they were like, no, we've got to use the data from when we were racing here. This is the quickest lap and all that. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't compare. Like, we're on a slightly down circuit, and so surely it makes sense to compare against Bottas. But they wouldn't do any of that for whatever reason. I think in the end it's because basically after we left the test, we found out within a week that they'd already signed all 4 of their drivers. And I think, unfortunately, for them, it was just a bit of a money-making exercise and a reality check for us of like, oh, right, okay, then maybe we need to look at other options. And at the time, the exchange rate was a lot better than it is now, from pounds to dollars. And also, if you did well over there, then there's some pretty good prize money to be won as well. And so originally, we looked at doing Indy Lights. We're like, right, let's go and do Indy Lights, and then maybe go into IndyCar. And we spoke to a few teams, and they told us the budgets. And in the end, like Andretti was like, no, go and do a year of Star Mazda first.
Okay.
And because we think that's closer to the budget that you've got. And then if you win that, then you get the sponsorship, and you can potentially race with us the year after. And so, so at that point, I went and did a test at Sebring with Anderson Racing. And so, yeah, it was a 2-day test at Sebring, and I was quickest in 3 out of 5 sessions, second quickest in the other 2. And it's like, okay, things are looking pretty good, but hadn't signed with them. And by the time I'd made it home, basically I had an email, I think, off all 12 teams, saying, right, we want you to race with us. This is the budget, because obviously news had come out that I hadn't signed with them at that point. And we had some budgets that I don't know how, unless the teams had their own sponsorship, I don't know how we would have made it through the season on such a little budget. But we had a conversation with Anderson Racing, and the prize money, I think, for first was $100,000, for second was $80,000, third was like $50,000. And basically Anderson would only do a deal that if we finished second, like basically they got all the prize money up to like $80,000 or something. But they wouldn't, like, even within a team, even when I did Formula Renault, you had to like mark your place and to prove that, right, you got to put all your eggs in this basket because we're going to be going for the championship. And if you're trying to make it even between the others, like that generally potentially loses a team a championship. And so we spoke to a few different teams, and then JDC Motorsport, and basically we agreed that they get all the prize money, the whole 100% of it, and so did the deal with them, and I raced with them, and again we ended up winning. I can't remember how many races we won that year, but it went all the way down to the last round.
Was that
And
Laguna Seca?
It was me versus Peter Dempsey. Not to be mistaken for Patrick. Irish chap. Not to be mistaken for Patrick Dempsey, which was in Grey's Anatomy at the time. But actually, to be fair, he also raced as well.
He did, yes, I saw he did a bit of racing, didn't he?
Yeah, because I was his teammate for a few races,
Cool.
like in the sister car, and so it went all the way down to the last round at at Laguna Seca, and so there was a race like 2 weeks before. In fact, there's actually quite a good story there. Like, whilst I was in America, like that wasn't smooth sailing either. That I was going in and out of the country, and I'd gone for a 2-day test, and I think it was at Utah, and went there, and they stopped me at the border, and they're like, "You've been in and out of the country like 6 or 7 times. Like, what's going on?" I was like, "Well, I'm just visiting." They're like, "What are you visiting? Like, why are you visiting? What are you doing? Blah blah blah." And then basically, I was like, "Well, I'm racing. I'm doing a race." They're like, "All right. Well, you don't have the right visa." I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Well, you're working over here." And I was like, "No, I'm not." They're like, "Yeah, you are. You're doing a race. Like, obviously you get paid for that." And I was like, No, I don't. And they're like, "Well, why not?" And I was like, "Well, because I'm trying to make a career of it, to eventually to get to a position where I get paid." He's like, "Well, who's paid for your flight?" And I was like, "My dad." And he's like, "Well, who's paying for the racing?" I was like, "My dad." And he's like, "Well, how does that work as a business?" And of course, at the time, I was like, "All right, I don't know." So,
actually, yeah. How does it?
But in the end, he was like, "Look, you're allowed in this time, but next time you come back in, we're going to return you home because you don't have the right visa." So, of course, there was a massive panic. I was there for a 2-day test anyway. Basically, I needed 14 days in the UK to sort a visa out. But the testing was almost every other week, or the races were every other week. So I didn't have a 14-day period. And then eventually it's like, great, there's a 3-week period. I get to go home. But the US Embassy was closed for the first week. It's like, that means there's only 10 working days. So that's not enough time either. So I ended up staying out there. So anyway, eventually, 87 days later, basically 3 months later, I eventually made it home. And basically, in the end, I had a massive blast over there. So my dad rang the team managers. Do you mind just adopting him and looking after him until we sort this out? So I stayed with them in North America, in I need to look on the map. In Minneapolis.
Oh yeah,
Minneapolis. So it's freezing up there, and so we ended up. I ended up staying there for quite a period at the time. Then I ended up picking up a sponsor who was one of the other drivers. Actually, he owned Molecule. Mike Wash back then owned Molecule, which they still do cleaning products for helmets and for race suits and and so I still see the product around, but he doesn't own it anymore. But back then he owned it, and he was like, "Look, okay, then the deal is sticker up the car and the suit and everything, and we'll get you a new suit with the sponsor on and stuff. And the prize money that I potentially win if I win the championship is this much, and if you help me win the championship, then I'll give you all the prize money for it." And I think it was like $15,000 or something back then. And so I was like, right, so I did that deal with him. So in theory, so I had that deal for when I was racing over there as well. So I stopped at his in California. And then we went to the Indy 500. That was one hell of an experience. Like,
awesome, isn't it?
Managed to get all the way into the center of the track without a ticket, because it got to the point where the race was about to start, and they were just trying to cattle people in. They're like, get in, the race is going to start in 5, hurry up. And like, people had just got their tickets.
That's 90 quid. That's 90 quid that I didn't need to spend.
they weren't paying any attention back then. I guess now you probably got to scan everything. But back then they just wanted to make sure everyone was in for the start of the race. And then, of course, I remember there being a massive Red Bull party after. And we ended up on the Red Bull bus between like a few of the Star Mazda drivers and that. And, of course, we're all, I don't know, I guess the majority of us were like 19, 20. So we weren't even old enough to actually like legally be out. But of course, we managed to sneak out. And of course, drivers and people had drinks and stuff at their houses and that. And so that, I just remember that being pretty awesome, wild night. And
Fantastic.
what else happened?
Sounds
But in the
brilliant.
end, the championship went all the way down to the last round, and I had to win, and Peter Dempsey had to finish in the top 7 for him to win. And
Okay.
in qualifying, I remember I went quickest, looking good, and then at the last minute he put a second set of new tyres on, and he pipped me by like 5,000ths of a second, or no, 500ths of a second, something tiny anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember being fuming about that. So anyway, so the race comes, I get the initial launch, so I end up getting the initial launch, feeling good, and then he had a rocket of a motor, and then his thing starts coming back halfway down the straight into turn 1 at
The
Laguna.
left-hander, yeah.
And then all I hear on the radio is, "Watch out, Alex is coming!" And it was Alex Ardoin, and he was my younger, slightly nutty teammate. And basically, him and Peter just outbraked each other straight on at turn 1. I managed to get the undercut, come back under, and I ended up leading the race. And then got to the corkscrew, and basically the year before, it was between Peter Dempsey and Joel Miller, and at the corkscrew, Peter took Joel out. This is the previous year,
Right.
and lost in the championship. And I don't know whether he'd just been waiting or biding his time, but basically he went in for the move at the corkscrew, and so Peter ended up spinning, and it was quite weird. Like, it was one of those, I was just pushing, like obviously just trying to get the gap, and it's like, well, that's all I can do. I just got to push and get the gap. Anyway, Peter spun back to last, and of course we've got radios, so they're telling us what's happening. Anyway, what he's doing is he's getting close to the cars, and he's like obviously overtaking. He gets back up to 7th, and what he's doing is he's getting behind, and the nose goes down, and the crash structure goes up. You could literally lift the back of the car in front of him. He'd literally lift them up, brake like a metre or 2 later, push them past the corner, and undertake them, and that's how he was like getting back up through the grid.
Wow.
And then eventually just went one too far and lost his nose, and lost the front wing, and ended up on the grass on the side. And I remember that sudden like shift in the race of suddenly just pushing, like I've got nothing to lose, to suddenly seeing his car on the side because he took his front wing off, to suddenly thinking, oh my God, don't make a mistake.
Right, everything to lose.
Suddenly the tension and the pressure just built up. But yeah, I managed to win the race and got the championship. And I feel like it was one of those, I guess, for either of us, it was like, well, whoever won the championship was going to get a lifeline to go racing for one more year. Because budget was basically ran out at that year, and that's why going to America with the exchange rate. And of course, at first I was like, I remember doing the 2-day test at the start of the season, so jumping back to the start of the year, doing the 2-day test and coming home, and Dad was like, well, what do you think then? What we're doing? We're going to try and do British F3 or America? And I was like, I think you need to go to America. And I remember watching, like, seeing in my dad's eyes, like his heart sank, because I think at that point, I think he'd only ever missed about 3 races during the whole of my race career.
Right.
For the whole life, for 12 years at that point. And I think he realised he wasn't going to be able to get to America to watch me race every race. And so in the end, it was the right decision, because I've managed to keep the ball rolling since.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, excuse me. You mentioned about, there was the opportunity to go into Indy Lights, or Indy Next as it is now. That essentially that didn't kind of happen, did it? How was it the plan? I mean, obviously, it sounds like it was the plan. You wanted to stay in America, and I guess it was part of the plan. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, how come it never came to be? Obviously, you had Andretti on the hook, I guess, as well, and
yeah. So I won the championship. It's like great, and basically there was prize money, and then you could pick a team, and Mazda would give that team the budget for the next season, which back then was meant to be like $750,000.
wow.
You listen to it, it's like, God, it's an insane number. But basically, so like the team that I raced with, JDC Motorsport, they got the whole 100,000, which we agreed with. So they took the risk that if I finished second, they basically end up getting underpaid by 20 grand. And basically I got to pick a team to go racing with the next season. Anyway, there was also the Atlantic Championship Racing, which was like the rival championship to Indy Lights. And
Yeah.
so generally, like John Edwards won the Star Mazda Championship the year before and went into the Atlantic Championship, and then basically that's what Mazda wanted me to do. But like I did 1 or 2 tests, and I was like, no, I want to do Indy Lights. Like there's no one really in that championship. The previous year there'd been rumors of this massive $1 million prize, and like the teams and the drivers had all convinced themselves that this was what was going to happen. And it got to the end of the championship, and there was no prize money. And of course, it all kicked off, and in the end, basically, it got to like March. I think it was around March. And Mazda were like, right, which team are you going to pick in the Atlantic Championship to go with? I was like, I'm not. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, but we're paying for you to do it. I was like, yeah, but I don't want to waste my time or your money. I was like, there's 4 people in the championship. I was like, it's not a championship. I wanted to do Indy Lights. Yeah. And so like 2 days later, suddenly it's announced that the Atlantic Championships collapsed and it's finished. And I think they kind of realized at that point, hold on, if we're paying the driver to do it and he doesn't want to do it, and there's only 3 other people signed up for it, then we don't really have a championship. And then at that point, they're like, right, which Indy Lights team do you want to go with? And I was like, well, I can't now. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, there's 2 cars per team. Yeah. And top 4 teams are all taken up. So now I'm just going to be a number in the championship. I was like, that's no good for me. And in the end, I was like, look, how about I don't do anything for the year, just do a bit of testing. And then the year after, we go racing. And they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. You got to pick something. And I was like, well, I'm not going that route. And so it's like, okay, well, what's the next option? And then they're like, well, maybe we can put something together and you can race in our LMP1 car with Dyson Racing, which was the Mazda factory team back then. So, of course, I was like, yeah, go, because suddenly I'm going from a 250 horsepower single-seater car to like a 600 horsepower monster LMP1 car. And I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. Anyway, sadly, the budget wasn't there to be able to do it. There wasn't enough prize money. And so they're like, well, the only other option is we can put you in our Grand Am Championship with a factory team, with another factory driver. And we can do that. And it's like, okay. And they're like, we've just won the Daytona 24 Hours. So you'll be with Speed Source for the year. And Sylvain was the team manager and owner of it. And we'll do that. And you got to use a borrowed car to start with. And then you'll get a brand new car a few races in and carry on. And so at that point, it's like, okay, I think that's the direction that we're going to go. So, and that's how I ended up moving into GT cars. And I think it was a great car to jump into because it's a silhouette car. It's a tube frame chassis just with a carbon fiber shell on it. And so as far as GT cars go, that was probably the closest thing from a single seater that a GT car can be. Right. And so we'd race against the Porsche Cup cars back then. There was no ABS, no traction control. Like this was the Mazda RX-8. It had 3 rotors, so it had the Wankel engine in, and it used to spit out flames like this, like a meter-long flame out the side of the car. And I've got 1 or 2 videos of this, which it's a shame. I could potentially show you, but I'm not too sure whether my the internet will stretch over this far or not. But so you used to race that. I've put a few videos on YouTube over the years of some of those, and it just screams beautifully. Like, just really sings. It's the same as the Mazda prototype car that raced at Le Mans.
Okay,
well, the same engine as that.
No, I've got a model over
there. Was it the 787?
It was was it the Herbert Gasho, that one, the one that won it? I forget what the sponsor was on it now, but
it had the rotary engine in it, and so
wow.
So raced that for a year, and we finished 5th in the championship. Things were looking great, and they're like, okay, we want to go racing next year, and I was like, perfect. I was like, this is brilliant. Mazda sorting it all out, and then basically got to like that was it. They were honouring. They're like, because you missed Daytona this year, we'll honour it for next year. So I was like, right, brilliant, okay, that's great. Obviously, they just won it the previous year, and so I was like, okay, that's looking good for a good shot at that. Anyway, it ended up what happened in between. I ended up thinking, right, if I'm doing a 24 hours, I've never done a 24 hours in my life. I don't know whether I'm going to have to sleep or not, and how I'm going to eat in between and all of that, because I guess previous single seaters. The Formula Renault races were 25 minutes. Star Mazda races were 45 minutes, and then the Grand Am races were, I think the longest was a 4-hour race, maybe a 6-hour
Okay.
race. I can't remember. But we had a win at Lime Rock. The first race that we got our new car, they put it on the ground, and we ended up winning our first race. But we were so lucky because apparently there was only 2 remaining bolts holding the gearbox onto the engine by the end of the race. Just because I guess new equipment, heat expansion, and all of that, and it just about survived, and sadly didn't quite have the opportunity to win any other races later. Well, there's always opportunities, but didn't quite win any other races. But I think it was always a little difficult. We were racing against the team owner, and so I'm pretty certain there was a little bit of a
tweak.
A pecking order of cars, of which was the quickest car and stuff. But yeah, speaking with 1 or 2 mechanics, they were like, "Oh yeah, there was definitely team orders and stuff around back then." But the thing is, we missed the first race of the season, so they were fighting for the championship. We finished 5th, and so anyway, so that is going back to like I've never done a 24, so it's like right. Is there an opportunity in the UK to do a 24? And I knew the Brit Car 24 was coming up at Silverstone. So I was like, well, maybe we can go and do that. And so I rang my old team manager, Andrew Cocotti, and I was like, look, do you know anyone in this? There's a Ferrari racing there. I'd like to go and do that because I'm doing a Daytona 24 hours next year. And he's like, what's the weekend? So I told him the details. And he rings back the next day. And he's like, look, I don't know anyone in Brit Car, but how'd you fancy driving our Ferrari that weekend at Monza? All you got to do is pay for your flight and your hotel and arrive, and we'll go and do the race. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. So suddenly I'm on the phone. I'm like, Dad. I was like, I need a flight to Italy. He's like, what for? And he's like, well, I've been given this opportunity to race in the Ferrari, and all they got to do is pay for the flight and the hotel. And of course, I was earning my £500 a month, so I couldn't afford to just splash out on that stuff. So of course, Dad was like, yeah, okay, we'll get it sorted. So anyway, so went and did the race. We finished 3rd, me and Tim Mullen in GT Open. And they're like, mega job. Would you like to come and do the final round at Barcelona? Same deal. So I was like, Dad, I'm going to Barcelona. I have to go to Barcelona. And he's like, yeah, okay. So I went and did that. And basically there was a test about.
We may have frozen. Oh, are we back? We're back. Sorry.
I can see you. Am I still?
Yeah, we're back. We just froze there. But we are back. Sorry, we got as far as flying out to Barcelona.
Yeah, so I went to Barcelona, and we went and did the 2-day test, or a day test. And there was a guy called Klaas Hummel, a Dutch guy, really tall, successful businessman from Amsterdam. And basically they're like, well, why don't you jump in with him and see whether you can coach him? Like in between the testing. I was like, yeah, okay. Then and everyone's like, you're mad. What happens if you crash? And I was like, well, surely if I crash with him, we'll be going slower than if I crash on my own, because I'll be closer to the limit anyway. In the end, of course, these things had straight through exhaust on these Ferraris. So like you could not stand in the garage whilst they were warming up. And every now and again, I see them on sale, like on Race Cars Direct. Every now and again, one of them pops up anyway. So I jump in the passenger side, fully strapped in. Obviously, you can't talk because it's too loud. So I'm like, right, go. I'm like, on the brake. I was like, 3rd gear, like next corner, 3rd gear. And I'm like, adjusting the wheel if I feel the need to. And so the next race weekend, I go there. I finish 2nd to Alvaro Parente. Klaas and Chris Goodwin, they have their first ever top 10 finish. So they're buzzing anyway. Over the winter, I get his contact and I'm chatting to him. I'm like, look, with your budget and my coaching, I think we'd make a great team, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, don't hear anything back. And then Andrew, the team manager, rings me back. He's like, look, so if you don't mind, don't get in contact with him. Of course, we're trying to also get hold of him at the moment, and it's a bit of a delicate situation. But I was like, okay then. And so I went and did the Daytona race. And did we finish? I want to say we finished 6th. We had a rear tyre blowout, and it blew the rear door off the car. I remember Jonathan Bomarito was in the car at the time. Jeez. And so we ended up a few laps down, and in the end we finished 6th. in the class. But yeah, again, like suddenly it gets to like March and I've got no plans for racing. My dad can't afford for me to go racing that year. And so it's just like, well, I guess that's the end of that. And then eventually get a phone call off Andrew and he's like, right. He goes, you're doing the Le Mans series? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I've been on the phone to class. He went through absolutely everything. I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying for that. I'm not doing this, not doing that, blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, it's like, right, but I'm going to pay double because I want to race with Adam. And so basically, he just like threw me a lifeline. And so in the end, it ended up being me, Class Someone, and Phil Quaife. The three of us would go racing together in the European Le Mans series. And I just remember, so Andrew's like, oh, yeah, we're doing the European Le Mans series. Of course, in my head, I was like, oh, my God, I'm going to Le Mans. But that's not part of that championship, so I think.
Yeah.
So that was my initial thought. So anyway, of course, I ended up ringing class literally the same day to say, thank you so much for the opportunity. Let's arrange a load of testing to get you up to speed more and go practicing at all these circuits. And before I even got to say any of that, he's like, Adam, he goes, I'm glad you rang. He goes, I'm going to the Nurburgring tomorrow. He's like, get a flight over to Amsterdam. And then tomorrow morning, we'll go by helicopter to the Nordschleife. I'm like, what? And so basically, that's what we did. So then suddenly I'm like off the phone to him. I'm like, Dad, I need a flight to Amsterdam. And he's like, what? I'm not paying for you to go on holiday. And I'm like, no. He's like, this is what's happening. He's like, oh, cool. Right, okay then. Wow. So that's exactly what I did. So I flew to Amsterdam the next morning. And then we had a coffee and then helicoptered across over to the Nurburgring. And
so you've gone from nothing to helicoptering from Amsterdam to the Nurburgring. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and like in a helicopter, it's like an hour. By car, it's like 3.5.
Yeah.
And so, so wow. we went to the Nurburgring, and he had this game called I'm sure it was called Flight Control, where you had to direct big planes onto the big runway, little planes onto a little runway, and then there was like a helicopter that you had to put on a helipad and try and stop them from crashing into each other while they were doing it. Anyway, he was like, right, we'll do a game of this, and if I can double your score, then I get to drive first, and if not, then you get to drive first. Anyway, of course, I had like half an hour practicing, and I was terrible at it anyway. Because he's like, right, it's my go, and literally just one point before he doubles my score, two of the planes crash into each other. He's like, oh, you have to drive first, and like he did it on purpose because compared to his highest score, he hadn't even got half or something. So. And what I got to learn about class is he got more enjoyment out of seeing other people experiencing things than him doing them himself, just because he was such a successful businessman and he'd made his fortune, and so he was able to literally just do what he wanted. And so I went to the Nurburgring. I did my first lap around the Nordschleife. It was in a BMW M3.
Was it the first time you've been there?
No, it's actually my second. So the first time I went there was at the end of 2007 for the Winter Series. No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was part of the Northern European Championship for Formula Renault. Okay. So we went there, and my dad was flying back from China. And I remember saying to him, I was like, look, when you land, make sure you get a good car because we want to go around the Nordschleife. He's like, yeah, okay then. It's back in 2007. Anyway. He arrives. He's like, what car you got? What car you got? And he's got a Mercedes Vito. He's like, oh, what the hell? And so, in the end, what we ended up doing, the whole team went around for a lap. So we were like fully packed in there. There was like 10 or 11 of us in this Vito, more than there should have been. Anyway, basically, my dad did the first lap and he's like driving around like nodding. And then Andrew Christodoulou, who also used to race, he did the next lap, and of course we were flat out. And I got my dad sat in the middle seat, my mechanic Mark sat in the the passenger seat, and both of them were squealing like little girls. Like when people, when some people get so nervous they start laughing at things. Like that was my dad and my mechanic at the time, and of course we were all howling with laughter. And as we went through the carousel, the thing just went and like went into like limp home mode. It was like, oh no, we had to pull over, turn it off, turn it on, and like then carry on because it wouldn't go over 30 at one point. And so, and then of course I got to do a lap, and then my teammate Nathan Karate got to do a lap as well. And so we did 4 laps, and so that was my first ever experience around the Nurburgring.
Brilliant.
And so then jumping back to 2011, back forward to 2011, I did my first lap and came in the pits, and I was like, "How's that?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's okay. Go and do another." And I was like, "Yeah, but what was the lap time?" They're like, "Don't worry." I was like, "No, tell me the lap time." They're like, "It's 12 minutes." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "So what's a good lap?" And they're like, 9 minutes. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "How am I 3 minutes off the pace? How is that even possible?" I was like, "That's terrible." So like, I was like, "Right." So of course, get back in the car. Next lap, I take a whole minute off the time. Next lap, take another like 35, 40 seconds off. And then 25 seconds, and then 15 seconds, and I'm just chipping away the whole day. I do all of 9 laps, like 9 laps around the Nurburgring.
It's a good day.
It is a good day's testing. So, so I got down to like a 9:14 after the first day, and I was like, "Well, what's a good lap?" Oh, that was it. So I did my first 2 laps, sorry, and then Class got to do some laps, and so he did 2 laps, and he comes in, and he's like, "Adam, I need a word." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh no, what have I done?" I was like, "Was it that downshift?" Because I might have done a little bit of a money shift, like going from I think I was going from 6th to 5th and then 5th to 4th, and I think I managed to almost get it to 2nd. Of course, I dropped the clutch, and I just remember the thing going completely sideways and going, whoa, and I managed to get on the clutch, what I believe was quick enough. But I was like, oh no, I was like, is the engine like giving up also? And I was panicking. I was like, oh my God, I was like, I've ruined it already, like 2 laps into ever testing with this guy. He's like, right. He's like, I can't do the first race. He's like, this is the deal. And I'm thinking, okay. He's like, so he goes, you're doing the first race. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, and then the second race is, he's like, I can't do the first one because I'm on holiday with my family. I'm like, right. He goes, can't do the second one because it's my wife's birthday. If I miss that, none of us are going racing ever again. I was like, okay. He's like, third race is my daughter's graduation. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So you're doing that one. I was like, right. He goes, and then there's one more race in the 24 hours. He goes, I'm not going to learn the track in one race. So he goes, you're going to do that and you're going to go and win the Nurburgring 24 hours. I was just like, what the hell? And basically, again, he just threw me a lifeline. I think he just realised that he went there to experience it, thought, no, this is far too much for him. But he'd already committed to the team and stuff for the season. And so basically, just threw me an opportunity. And in the end, he's like, right, you need some teammates. And I didn't know anything about the championship back then. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it's a 4-hour race. You can't do it on your own. I was like, right. So basically, it ended up being me, Phil Quaife, and Tim Mullen. The 3 of us went racing around there. And so yeah, so they arrived for the second day because like literally I got to ring them and say, hey guys, could you get to the Nurburgring tomorrow? Because we got a whole season paid for to go racing.
Because you're going racing this year, yeah.
Yeah, and so so I did the test the rest of the day, got down to a 9:14, and at night time, I was like, so what's a good time? And they're like, well, actually, the lap record in the class is 9:10. And I was like, oh, I'm going to smash that tomorrow. So like, I'm going there with like loads of confidence. The next day, get on track, and there's like double the amount of cars. Instead of there being 50 cars, it's like 120 or 130. I'm like on the radio, traffic, okay, Adam, there's traffic, okay, Adam, there's traffic. Adam, there is always traffic. You don't need to tell us. It's the Nurburgring. There's 200 cars. I was like, oh, okay. So so the next day I went like 10 seconds.
It's a monstrous grid, isn't it? It's a massive grid, isn't it?
It used to be bigger than what it is now. So like now it's restricted, I think, to 200 for a VLN or NL. It's now called NLS. And I think the 24 hours is restricted to 160, which is a shame because I'm pretty certain the first year that I did the 24 hours around there, it was 220 cars.
Wow.
And a lot of the Nurburgring, like the VLNs back then, had almost 200 cars.
Jeez.
And they've really reduced the amount of cars that are doing it now, which I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. Like, I guess the challenge of having to cut through all the smaller cars. I think now the smallest car that you see racing around there, apart from like the Foxtail, and that's the thing, which is the scariest thing.
I remember seeing the Dacia, yeah, I saw.
And then the smallest car, like, I'm just trying to think whether you even see Renault Clios around there anymore. I don't think you do. I think it's TCR cars basically are the slowest cars around there now. And a few wild cards, I guess. But so that was my opener to the Nurburgring.
Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely petrifies me because it's like 3 minutes off the pace. So every 3.5 laps, we overtake it. So we are going
How much
Yeah,
faster is that?
30% faster than it.
Crikey, that's a lot, isn't
but
it?
it, like it's not that it's like it's slow on the straight, but it's not even quick around corners. So sometimes and of course because we're catching so fast, like, it can't be enjoyable to drive that. Like the first cars that I raced around there were GT4s, and you'd like the first few laps you'd be driving fine, and then eventually you'd drive in your mirrors after about an hour because that's when the GT3s would catch up and start to overtake. But in that thing, you're literally getting overtaken on the second lap of the race because
Yeah.
it starts in the third group, and there's 3 groups, and each group starts 2 minutes apart. So by the time it started its second lap, you're already overtaken.
You're already
you're already lapping it in a GT3 car. So,
jeez.
and I voiced my opinion that thing shouldn't race anymore. That and the Foxtail, they should be in the classic races or whatever, because it's just every year it's involved in a massive incident because it's just too slow and dangerous. But of course, the fans seem to love it. But
yes, I've just seen our friend I4 Ronaldo, whose name is Nicky. I've just found out, named
Nicky
after
Nurburgring.
After Niki Lauda, which is very cool. He said it was the Dacia Logan. Absolutely, that's the one. Peculiar little thing, but yeah, obviously a bit of a menace as well if you're going a bit faster. But
like to the point that I remember was it last year? It was either last year or the year before. The team manager Adam from Get Speed is like, you know what I'm going to do? He goes, I'm going to buy that car. He goes, I'm going to buy it so no one can race it at the 24 hours. But of course, it ended up in a massive smash, and of course, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's the end of it. But of course, they managed to find another chassis, and they built another one. Again, that thing's still going. So,
keeps bouncing back. It's an indestructible thing. Yeah, it should be on Top Gear. They destroyed the big.
Oh wait, is that what they used on Top Gear?
No, it was the.
What was the reasonably priced car? What was that?
Oh no, it was the Chevrolet Lacetti, wasn't it? And then it was the
Kia. I did some filming at the Top Gear circuit the other day.
Oh, cool.
So I guess you'll see that, I guess, on the Autosport YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Auto Trader. The Auto Trader YouTube channel in a few days.
Okay.
That was with Rory Reid, which was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. I think the Dacia thing for Top Gear was James May's love of the Sandero, wasn't it? Shocking little thing. Well, I'm sure it's absolutely fine. I mean, as I've got on my notes here, you've driven so many things, and I sort of handpicked some of the sort of cool ones. I mean, while we're on the subject of the Nurburgring, there's a lot of people who said that the biggest challenge of the 24 is driving at night with slower cars. I mean, I spoke with like Tom Coronel about it, and he said that he doesn't normally get scared. You know, he's done the Dakar and all this other kind of stuff. He said when it rains at night on the 24, and you're coming up on, when he was in a TCR car, I think it was. Similar.
Well, those things are Larry anyway in the first place.
Sorry?
Because the TCR cars are Larry in the first place because they're front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
You have to put a lot of toe out on the rear so they rear steer, otherwise you burn up the front tyres. Because on a front-wheel drive car, the front tyres have got to accelerate, brake and turn. And the rear tyres may as well be trailer tyres.
Yeah.
So what they do is they have them set so that when you turn, it just continues to turn. So like when you see them racing, like on the Nordschleife, especially when they did like the TCR World Cup or whatever it was, they're going down the straight and like over the bumps, the cars are like doing this in a straight line because they're rear tracking everywhere. And so I can only imagine. And I drove one about a year ago, a Zambor, and honestly, the thing petrified me.
Right.
So, because I went into turn, they call it turn 3 before the bolt. And I went in there and the thing just carried on rotating. And I was like, oh no, and I just had to nail the throttle to pull it out of the oversteer, which is obviously opposite to what you do in a rear wheel drive car. But you're right, like at night time, obviously suddenly your eyes are on stalks around the Nurburgring, and especially if it goes from wet to dry and then you've got to put slicks on at some point. The problem is at night time you can't see where those wet patches are, and then of course it's the Nurburgring, so it always throws in a bit of fog as well, and of course someone drops a bit of oil or whatever, and you've seen it like in the past at like The Grello had a nice little lead a few years ago and hit some oil and just went off, and that was the end of their race. And it happens like that, and that's what happened to me this year. That I did I started the race, and we started on a cut slick, and basically on the Grand Prix circuit, I went from 18th to 5th, and then I managed to get into 4th. And in my head, I just knew that I had to push as hard as I could, because I knew that part of the way around the Nordschleife, it was wet. And so anyway, of course I'm going, and then as I get to Hatzenbach, the start of the Nordschleife, it's already wet there. And I'm like, oh no, this is wetter, like about 3 or 4 kilometers earlier than I anticipated, because the clouds were coming.
It was coming in.
And basically, suddenly I've got a train of cars around me, like trying to overtake, but they're just watching me like slide from one side of the track to the other. So they're taking their time, being a bit cautious. David Pittard, we went through Foxhole, and I've just got the spray off the cars in front. I can't see a thing. And to go through Foxhole where the new tarmac is and that massive new curve, unfortunately. And the new tarmac's fine. Get to the next bit, which is old tarmac. I start to oversteer and almost lose the rear. Pittard tried to go around the outside of me, and I just clipped him, and it was a bit of a bang, but didn't think much of it, like continued. But that put them out of the race. I don't know how it hit or what it hit, but like it may, unless he hit something else after, and he went a little mad online after, which I was like, well, in the end we're racing, and of course he accused me of trying to outbrake him on slicks and that. I was like, no, I was just trying to survive, honestly. And so it was just it was like, you're on slicks in the wet. I was just trying to survive, and it's one of those that in the end, like Maro ended up pitting for wets, and some of the others I managed to overtake him on the wet track on the like basically the cut slick, and then 3 laps later he came in the pits, put wets on. 3 laps later he overtakes me because he's on the wet. And then 2 laps later it starts drying, and he had to come back in the pits for slicks, and of course I've just continued on the slicks for the 5 laps. And it was one of those, like, I lost a minute on the first lap, and then I lost like 40 seconds, and then 20 seconds, and then it was the next lap were the same. And then literally as soon as it started drying, I took a minute out of everyone, and then I took another minute out of everyone. And so after everyone pitted on lap 5 or 6, because there was a minimum for the first stint of a 5-lap run before you're allowed to refuel, everyone pitted, and of course we were leading the race at that point for a handful of laps. And so it was one of those, like, well, it'd have been a lot nicer to have been driving on wets, but it's a shame, like this year in the end got cut short anyway. But yeah, I was driving at night time, and was on slicks, and then suddenly hit some oil or something and went off and was a passenger, and sadly that was the end of our race. And then I was also on the other car because I was on double duty this year, and that car ended up out of the race about an hour or 2 hours into the race, and it's like, what are the chances of that? But it wasn't much of a 24 this year, so it
was a lot of safety car and fog, and wasn't there? There was a lot of that going on. Just to jump ahead, I guess we've got to talk about, well, we're on the subject of the Nurburgring and the 24 and the Nordschleife. You have won it, which is a very cool thing to be able to say. Was it 2016, wasn't it?
Yeah. Must have been so close to winning it twice more since. But the thing is, at the Nurburgring, everything just has to go perfect. And
it's a bit like
the year that we won it, everything went perfect. And even and then the other 2 years, when we finished second, there's just 1 or 2 little mistakes here and there. And in 2018, I think it was, 2018, we had like a 3-minute lead because the Grello car ended up with a 4-minute stop and go penalty because they were going too fast in the code 60 zones. They were basically speeding, and then eventually I think what happened was one of them got caught overtaking or something, going quicker than 60, so they got penalized for it. So at this point we're like, wow, we've got this massive lead in the race, and then it got red flagged, and it wiped out their penalty basically, and it was only us 2 on the lead lap. And so it ended up being one of those that it was like, well, it's not going to start. There's so much fog. Like, it's far too foggy to go racing. So we're just behind the safety car for a few laps, and I can just about see the safety car, and then suddenly I was like, on the radio, any news? They're like, no, just carry on. And then suddenly I'm like, guys, the safety car's come in the pits. And they're like, what? I was like, the race has gone green. I could just about see the green light on the gantry. So of course we go, and I led it for a few laps, and then it was me and the Grello car, and we were fighting and going into turn 1 side by side, and then there was a bit of contact at turn 2, and I had a half spin because of the contact, and got going again, and then of course the red mist came, so I was like pushing like a lunatic. Managed to start catching up. I was like, oh, this is good. As it got dry, I started to catch up, and getting closer, and then I ended up aquaplaning, going into Gallenkopf, which is the massive corner onto the Dottingerhoofd, the big straight.
Yeah.
And literally just aquaplaned, and somehow kissed the barrier completely square on, and bounced back onto the track. And I'm like, guys, I've hit the barrier. And they're like, we saw, because of course they've got the live video on our car. And I'm like, and they're like, how is it? And I was like, I'm going flat out down the straight at this point. I'm like, I think it's okay. And like, it was just like a full-on Gran Turismo move where literally I just like bounced off the barrier and carried on, and somehow it barely marked the car. I have no idea how I got away with it.
Wow.
But yeah, I was catching up, thinking, right, okay, things are looking good. And then it started raining more and more. And then the Porsche just disappeared. And I was gutted. Like, I felt like I lost the race for the team. And I just couldn't believe it. And I was beating myself up about it. And anyway, it was one of those. I was like, are you sure we're on the right tyres? They're like, yeah, we're on the right ones. And basically for 2 years, I was like, I can't believe, like, they picked me to do the driving because they're like, we believe you're the quickest in the wet. So I was like, right, okay. Which is why I always need to get thrown in whenever it's wet or tricky conditions. And so they're like, we need someone that's good in the wet conditions. Let's pick the Englishman. So,
I mean, it figures. Yeah, the logic figures. Yeah.
I know. So anyway, it's only when I went to resign my contract with Mercedes for the next 2 years, like this came up in topic, and they're like, well, it's because you had the wrong tyre. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you just had the wet tyre. You didn't have the monsoon tyre on. I was like, what? I was like, you're kidding me. I was like, they told me I was on the right tyre, and I was on that tyre. And they're like, no, it was the wrong tyre that you're on. I was like, what the hell? So like, I'd been beating myself up for like a year and a half, thinking that it cost the race, but it was that in the end. And then in 2019, we were leading. I jumped in the car, and I had contact at turn 1 with the Toyota Supra, I think it was, and that bent the steering. So that meant that we didn't do that. Well, we didn't finish that race, and of course, like, I was gutted because I felt like, oh man, like that's ruined the race. And then the next year, we were leading again, and with an hour to go, Maro's in the car again, some crazy foggy conditions, and he's following a car through, and the little foxtail basically allowed one car past. Maro's following, clipped the wheel, and basically Maro and the foxtail car went off into the barriers. So that was with an hour to go whilst we were leading. Are you kidding me? And then the year after, my teammate Manuel Metzger was in the car, and we were leading by about a minute, looking good. Crazy wet conditions. He was also insanely good in the wet. He aquaplaned coming out the Kleiner carousel, the little mini carousel, and that put us out of the race. And it was like, are you kidding me? And then in the end, Lucas Stoll goes to us. He's like, I don't want to race with you guys next year, because he goes, you know what's going to happen? It's going to be my turn. So anyway, at that point, Mercedes had put me and Maro with Get Speed. Yeah. And we finished second. And actually, unfortunately, that year, Luca ended up with an incident. It's like, you could have, like, that car was cursed for like 4 years.
There was something wrong with it, yeah.
And so anyway, it's just how it rolls sometimes. And like, the thing is, like, when I had my incident and I spoke to my boss, he's like, look, he's like, don't worry about it. He goes, we know for this race, the only way to beat the other cars is by taking more risk, and that's the only difference, because like, the cars are all so equal now. Basically, you've either somehow got to outsmart them or get lucky with a strategy call, or you've got to outdrive them and take a slightly higher risk. And so they're like, it's how it rolls at that place. And so, like that, not that it made me feel much better, but I was like, okay, well, at least I'm not going to lose my job.
Yes, at least that bit.
So,
At least that bit.
and that's just how it is. Like, I guess you take the highs and the lows together. And so, yeah, we finished second 2 years ago. We finished fourth last year, and then neither car finished this year. And so we'll hopefully, I got to look at contracts for next year, and so hopefully it should be back next year and give it another shot. So
yeah, fingers crossed.
Like, it's my back garden, so it's the one that I want to win again. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And it was not controversial when we won in 16, but it was the closest ever. It was the closest ever Nurburgring 24-hour win ever, and it was 6 seconds basically between us and the second Mercedes. And actually, during that year, when I said everything went perfect, basically in the last pit stop, about an hour before, I was like, "We can get an extra lap out of this race," and they're like, "What?" And like, they hadn't registered. I was like, "Yeah, if we carry on, and there's no slow zones or anything, we can get an extra lap out of this race." And basically, I was like, "But the other team in front of us can't, because they had like a minute and a half gap at this point."
Okay.
I was like, "They can't. This is in 16." And anyway, suddenly it comes down to it, and with 2 laps to go, they pit for fuel, and then he stalled coming out the pit lane. And so going into the last lap, Maro's about 1.5 seconds behind.
Yeah.
And going onto the back straight of the Grand Prix, he just dive bombs the other car. Basically, like, I remember speaking to Maro saying, like, "Was there any team orders?" And he was like, "No, screw that." And I was like, "Good, okay, good answer." Because I was thinking, if there was team orders, I was like, I wonder if I have to get in the car and just unplug my radio, because like as he said, he goes, "No, there's one opportunity to win this race." Like,
Yeah.
and that's what some people, like, sometimes that's all that some people get. And so so like, at that point it's just like, well,
you go for
it. You go for it, and he went for it, and there was contact, and then suddenly there's something flapping off the back of the car, and I was like, "Oh my god, we're gonna get a puncher!" And honestly, it was the longest 8 minutes of my life.
I'll bet.
To come back to the start line, and I lost my voice and I choked up and all of that just from screaming so much when he crossed the line. And like, that is still my best result ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to have won it and be on the podium at the Nurburgring, I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, there's not much that can top that, surely. I mean, that's got. I mean, you alluded to it. You were screaming your head off about it and stuff.
Yeah.
Must have been brilliant.
Here we go. So Ronaldo, but yeah, when it with the match, so it hailstormed in 2016. In fact,
yes.
Joking aside, I remember someone going to Bernd Schneider like, "What's it feel like winning the Nurburgring 24 hours twice?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, you've won it twice, the Nurburgring 24 hours." He's like, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Both years we missed like 3 or 4 hours of the race because the hail and the weather." Because he won it in 2013 and 2016, and we need to change that next year, because it's been too long since the Merc's been on the top of the podium there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just say about Maro. So that's like Maro Engel. I think it's his birthday today or yesterday.
It was yesterday. Yeah, it was his birthday yesterday.
Yesterday, yes. I was always trying to do birthday posts, and I keep meaning to do one, but I didn't put it in my calendar. Sorry, Maro. I'd like to get him on here for a chat. Actually, that'd be pretty cool.
He's great, and I'm sure he's got millions of stories to tell of how he got into his position and all of that. And so it is cool, like, seeing how people get into certain situations. Like, I count myself as being so lucky, because like, I did the American thing and then raced with the Dutch guy, and then the year after, it was like, someone wants me to race at Nurburgring. I won't do it because I know you'd like to. He's like, "Look, I'll give you this money for it, but they need like another $7,000. I was like, "Look, I can't do it." He's like, "Well, speak to the team, see what you can do." And I negotiated a better deal than the amount of sponsorship he was going to give me. So like, rang him back. I was like, "I've managed to save you some money." I was like, and he's like, "Oh, great." So I went and did it that year in GT4 again, and then the year after, I did Dubai 24, finished second. We started 98th and finished second in 2014, I think it was. And I was watching the race, brilliant. He's like, he sat down. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, good. He was like, "I'm not racing this year." And of course, my heart dropped at that point in 2014. I was like, "What?" I was like, "Shit, I'm finished." And he's like, no. He goes, "But look," he goes, "I'm not going to leave you with nothing." He goes, "The team owes me a bit of money because we didn't do one race." So he goes, "That's for you to put to what you want." So he's like, leave it in the team, put it towards a Nurburgring 24, take it to another team, or take it out and invest it in some business or something. So I negotiated with the team to do one test day, one VLN race in the Nurburgring 24 in 2014. This was, and ended up as the quickest Merc driver in qualifying at the 24 that year. And then during the race, our car ended up retiring. And I remember Sean Paul was like, "Oh, you should have been in the number one car." The next year they put me in the number one car. Then the year after I signed my contract with Mercedes in 2016, and then we won the race. And I've just managed to keep the ball rolling since. But like in my head, I just think, God, like thinking of the butterfly effect. Imagine if one little thing had been slightly different. Like I might not be racing right now. And
it could have been a completely different route.
And so I do always feel extremely lucky to do what I love doing.
Yeah, fantastic. As I said, there's loads and loads of things to talk about. I'm just keeping an eye on the time because we are rattling on, it's flying by. Two things I do want to talk about. Obviously, we are Brits. We've got to talk about British GT. You've done more than a handful of races. Firstly, I mean, would you like to do a full British GT campaign? I know one of your former teammates, and I guess a pal of yours, Max Gertz, who came on here. Obviously, he's with 2Cs Racing, and he's doing a full season. Would you look at doing British GT? Because I'm going to Brands for the finale this year, and I'm really looking forward to catch up with Max. He said he'd sign a couple of bits and give me a little model of his car, which is nice.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a good lad. Would you do a season British GT?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think it's always one of those. Like this year, I ended up with 2 deals that fell through, so I've ended up racing a lot less this year compared to what I guess I'd projected at the start of the year. So I've been going backwards and forwards to China a little bit and doing stuff over there, but it would have been nice to have done a full championship. So like I've ended up doing selected GT World Challenge races, selected Nurburgring races, 1 or 2 little classic races, and then I've got GT World Challenge Monza coming up. And then hopefully at least 1 more Nurburgring. Hopefully I'll get to go back to Macau again. So I went and did that for the first time last year in GT4. So that would be pretty cool to go and do that. And so, last year I put it on pole position at Macau, but it was given team orders, which ate me alive. And so finished second. So I'd like to go back and go and win that thing this year, if given the opportunity.
That's a phenomenal circuit, isn't it? I mean,
it is wild, honestly.
It shouldn't really be allowed, should it?
I think it's harder than the Nurburgring, and it's because there's 3 sections that go right, left, and they've got different middle and different endings, but they all look too similar to start with. And so in the end, the reason I put it on pole position was because I followed my teammate out of the pits. And he left the pits like a scolded cat. And I wasn't like ready for it. But literally, as we got to the last corner, he went red flag. So then the next time I was like, right, I'm going to be a bit more on it for leaving the pits and we'll go for a lap. Anyway, so I monstered him into turn 3. This was in the new Lotus GT4. So I monstered him into turn 3. And then in sector 2 and 3, he pulled away because that was the tricky section. But sector 4, I matched him. And then sector 5, he just kissed the wall on the exit 2 corners from the end. And I got a slightly better run. And so I just pipped him by 0.2. But then when I went out after, and then it went red like 2 laps later, but we'd hit traffic. And so we literally got 1 clear lap and that was it. Anyway, when I went back out after, I couldn't get within half a second of my time. And I don't know whether that's because of tire degradation or whether it's just because I was just leaving a little bit of a margin because I didn't have a rabbit to follow at that point. Right. So if I do get the opportunity to go again, I need to do another few days on the sim just to even though I managed to do a little bit on the sim, now I know it, I feel like I'd be able to do it better and just to optimize 1 or 2 little things. But I did a load of practice, but still suddenly the fear factor kicks in real life. And so if given the opportunity next year, I want to do at least 1 full championship. If I can do another one, then that'd be great. And then obviously go back to the Nurburgring, and then also I enjoy doing the classic race as well because they're just different machines. And another race, a fun race of mine, is the Fun Cup.
I saw you kind of did that once, didn't you?
I've done it 2 or 3 times now. But honestly, it's one of my most enjoyable races I ever do. Just because I guess there's 140 cars at start, and it's like a game of chess on the track. It's like if I overtake you into turn 1, you're going to get the slipstream and overtake me into turn 2. But then I'll get the toe up, come off straight, so then I'll get you into the next corner. If I can get another toe off the guy in front, and hopefully that drags me along to the next guy. And literally, it's just about where you position the car to try and get the advantage, like try and get in the next tow. Because what I didn't realize the first year I did it was all the pro guys went out straight away and were fighting. I was like, what are they doing that for? And I went out on my own, and I was 2.5 seconds off the pace. And I was like, what the hell? And it's because I didn't realize a tow is worth 2.5 seconds, and you've got to go out in like a pack of 4, and basically slingshot again, like past each other, and then it's just a bit of a look at the draw on who gets it coming out the last corner to get the final slingshot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we started 39th the first year I did it, and after 45 minutes I got into 9th, and then we agreed to come in around the 1 hour mark, and the radio wasn't working. So I looked at my watch during the safety car, and I was like, I've done about an hour. So I come in the pits, and I get out, and I see a guy. I'm like, get in the car, and he's like, it's not my car, mate, because we were in a team DRM that had 12 cars. They were running 12 cars, and of course everyone's in the same suits. And I was just getting all my teammates for the first time that week, and I could see my teammate in the garage trying to get his gloves on and get in the car. And he's like, why'd you come in so early? I was like, we said 1 hour, and he's like, no, the race started 20 minutes late. I was like, are you kidding me? So there's always something going on. So there's always entertainment everywhere.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Everywhere we go.
Yeah. Quick one. About British GT. The Team Abba you raced with, the Green Machine, is one of my favourite cars on the whole grid. I'm hoping you're not going to disappoint me here. Does it drive as nicely as it looks? Because it always looks the nuts.
It's a Merc. They all drive brilliantly. So it's one of those, obviously when it doesn't have the green on, it's full Batmobile spec, and just all in matte black livery, looking really cool. But the chrome green, it's known for the chrome green, and they do a real good job with the livery and stuff. And so it's, to be honest, apart from the minor setup changes, the Mercs all pretty much feel the same. And of course, you start the thing up, and the thing just roars, and so it always puts a smile on your face. And every now and again, for certain events, we get to do passenger laps, and of course, you can see people beaming inside their helmet, running from ear to ear.
Yeah, fantastic. No, I love it. Love that car. I actually saw it up close with Richard Neary and Ian Logging at the GT Cup brand. So actually, it just looks even better up close. It's fantastic.
Yeah. No, it's to be honest, the majority of the liveries in the British GT are really cool. So
they do look good.
But I just saw that I think Loggy and Keane, they've just moved over to the Porsche for the second.
Yeah, the 992, isn't it?
Yeah. So
and they've still got the old school livery on it, which is cool.
Yeah, I saw that. And then earlier, actually, when you were doing the intro, you were saying doing news and all of this and breaking news and all of that. And then, of course, yesterday there was quite some interesting. Wait, was it yesterday or was it today? About Logan Sargent.
Yeah, that was yesterday. I actually put it out today. I'd already written my bits for yesterday, and then it broke. I was like, "Oh, come on!" The breaking news is a pest.
When did you find out then?
Sorry.
So when did you find out?
No, I'd basically written all my stuff for yesterday, and it broke yesterday, so I didn't put it out until today.
Right, okay.
I saw it when it broke. I do hear a few things that I have to keep under my hat. I can't really say too much. I'm not far from Williams. I know someone who's very close to Williams.
Okay.
And they did say on Monday, they said it looks like that's Logan's last.
Well,
race.
I guess
That's what I
gone
can't
too many instances, hasn't he? And in the end, it's the pinnacle of the sport, and it's cutthroat. You've seen it in other races with other drivers, which is oh no, that's unfair. When Nick de Vries was in there, but he's not the only one. It's in the end, there's so much money on the line with it that every championship point that they get, I think the first championship point that they get is the biggest amount of prize money that the team receives towards their season, I guess, pot at the end of the season. And every time you have a momentous crash like that, it's costing hundreds of thousands or millions to repair, and so
lots of zeros.
And so it's cutthroat, but I guess he'll be in something quick somewhere else.
I'd like to see him in IndyCar. I think he'd be very good. But then again, that grid's filling up as well, so who knows? Right, final thing. Got to talk about this before we get onto fun little bits to wind down. Bathurst this year. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Bathurst, anyone who's ever seen anything about Bathurst, if you don't love it, there's probably something wrong with you, because it's just awesome. You went there. I mean, you've been before. You went there for the 12-hour this year.
Yeah.
And it went rather well, didn't it?
Oh, it went swimmingly well. So, like, the first time I did it, in fact, that was the last race I did before I signed my contract with Mercedes. Like, Mercedes sent me my contract, I guess, January that year, but Bathurst was on. And so I delayed signing it because I knew I had the opportunity to do that race in 2016 with Pro Sport in their Porsche Pro 4, Cayman Pro 4. So I went and did that race and then literally got home, signed it and sent it to Mercedes because I just thought I might only get one opportunity to go to this track. So I went and did that. But yeah, and I've been now 4 times, but I've only raced there twice because the 2 years after I went as a driver coach and then an engineer the third year. And so I got to go this year, and like it's the first few laps are eye-opening. Like the track is obviously very green, and you're looking at lap times versus the previous years, and you're like, why are we 5 seconds off the pace? And it's just because the track's green, and the track just over the weekend just rubbers in and gets quicker and quicker again.
Yeah.
And then so like managed to get the lap record in GT4, which is cool, and then so put it on pole position, but it's funny because like the McLarens were like 10 kilometers off the pace and they were like whining that we were too fast and all of that. So anyway, we ended up with extra weight and a little less power. It's like, come on guys. Anyway, I out-qualified their driver by like half a second. And it's like, yeah, but I've got more experience and all of that. And of course we're trying to fight our corner anyway. Suddenly in the race starts. I come out of turn 1. By the time I got to turn 2, the McLaren's already ahead of us. It's powered past us. So it's gone from being 10 kilometers down in qualifying to suddenly faster than us. It was like, oh no. Yeah. And so
that's on the run up.
And of course, it's the run up the hill anyway. Like, so we had a mega battle throughout the whole race. And then I think it was around hour 9. It just rained a little bit, and their driver, it rained a few times during the race. And at one point we were trying to get a lap back. And they're like, right, we need to pit. And I was like, no, don't. And they're like, why? And I was like, because we're literally right in front of the safety car. We need to pull away from the safety car first. And then we pit because then we get a free pit stop. And we'd got one of the bronze drivers was in the car. I was like, you able to do another lap? And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, but I need to pit. He's like, no, but we need you to pull away from the safety car. And it was to slow it. Like, basically, it took him 3 laps to get to the back of the train, because there was so much standing water and he was on slick tyres, like sliding around everywhere, just to make sure that when we came in, we could do the tyre change, get back out and not lose a lap. And so that got us back on the lead lap. And then when the other team tried it a few hours later to try and gain a lap, their driver made a mistake and aquaplaned and caused a little damage, and that gave us a lap advantage at that point. So but yeah, like honestly, it was one of those that we only just about finished, and we had an issue with the rear wheel kept on coming loose, because basically that was one of the first cars to Australia, and the studs that go into the upright weren't welded in on the newer cars. When they come out of the factory, they're welded in now.
Oh right. Okay.
But this was one of the first cars, and it still had like the original uprights on, and so it's like in the end we were having to get like new nuts and stuff, and like each time just put new nuts on that one corner, and I'm going around with like half an hour to go and the thing's vibrating, and thankfully we had that 1 lap buffer, because I had to come in the pits twice just for them to tighten the wheel nuts up for me to carry on, and then it would like loosen up again. And I think if the race had been another stint longer, I don't think we would have made it to the end. But so that was one hell of a result for us to start the season off, and that was not long after I went to India at the start of this year, like for New Year's. We thought, right, let's go traveling, me and Sam, and so we went to India for a few weeks, and I was like, right, we'll go India, and then I got Dubai 24, then Bathurst, and in between we'll go to like Bali, and we'll go to Sri Lanka, and we'll just do like a bit of a world tour on that side of the world. Anyway, we're in India, and after like 3 weeks, suddenly I get a phone call like, can you get to America next week? And I'm like,
you sounded good.
I was like, how am I going to break this to Sam?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got to cut our holiday short because I need to go to America. And so anyway, in the end, she completely understood, and she can work remotely with her work and stuff. And so it worked out well. She went to Sri Lanka and did a yoga retreat. I went to America for 2 weeks. It took me 48 hours to get there, 46 hours to get there because I had all cancelled flights because of weather, and it was just a nightmare getting there. But anyway, in the end, for me, it ended up being a brilliant result. Like speed was strong there all week, and so I'd like to go back and try and win myself a Rolex if I can next year.
Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, love it. Bathurst in Daytona. It's not a bad start to the year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll do. Okay, I'm just going to take a comment here from our friend Nicky, Mr. Ronaldo. He did, and then we'll just do like a couple of fun ones just to go down. Oh, hang on. Sandro, number 19. He said, he's mentioned every circuit I love and want to get to someday. Yeah, with you on that. Absolutely.
I've got one circuit still on my bucket list, which is frustrating. I haven't had the opportunity to go there yet, but that's Le Mans. I feel like I've done every other 24 except Le Mans, and of course, there's always the big argument, like, what is the biggest 24? Is it Le Mans or is it the Nurburgring 24? Because one track's 25 kilometers long, and the other track's got obviously these incredible prototypes that go there, and so there's always a bit of a. It's
a sticking one, isn't it?
Yeah. I think obviously, I personally think the Nurburgring is the biggest one, but
it just depends, doesn't it, on which way you lean.
And then the Spa 24, that's the biggest GT3 24 hours there is.
Yeah.
It's another one. But,
there's loads of them.
Katie was saying that. Logan, his repair bill versus Alex was huge, which in the end, it's, as we were saying, it's a cutthroat championship. But it's not just that. Like, even as drives in GTs, pro drives in GTs, if you have too many incidents, then you also, I guess it's the equivalent of making mistakes at not the equivalent of making mistakes at your normal job, but if you don't perform at work, then you get warnings and you can put your position in jeopardy. And
I'll find somewhere else.
It's happened one too many times for him that they eventually,
unfortunately,
ran out of lifelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just back to our friend Mr. Ronaldo, Nicky. He said it would be your 24-hour Nurburgring dream team. You and one or two others. Who would you have? This is a horrible question. If Max Gertz is listening, he's going to be.
So hard to say for the Nurburgring. So obviously, when we won it in 2016, there was me, Maro, Manuel Metzger, and Bernd Schneider. I'd love to do it again with the four of us, but a few years ago, Manuel hurt himself, and Bernd has retired since. So but Manuel's back racing again now, and hopefully I'll see him back in a GT3 in a year or two, which would be cool. But I think I would love to do it like me, Maro, Fabi, Schiller, and maybe Manuel Metzger, because I think he's one of the fastest guys around there in the world. And of course, in the Merc, we know that thing inside out. But then, of course, you start looking at other drivers. It's like, well, hold on a sec. You got drivers like Nicky Tim and Kevin Estra and Kelvin van der Linde and all of those guys, and they're heroes as well. And so it's so difficult.
There's a good list, isn't there?
You could be with a combination of 20 different drivers, and you could win that race. It really just depends on traffic and luck and weather and when you pit and stuff. And so you don't necessarily need the fastest lineup around there to win that thing.
You just need a bit of luck. Same as Le Mans and everything else, isn't it? You need it to fall your way at the right time. Okay, right. So much more we could cover, but we're getting on a bit, which I don't mind, but I'm sure others want to. Oh, and Nicky's given that some thumbs up. He likes that. Good stuff. Happy days. I think if you mention German drivers in Mercedes around the Nurburgring, Mr. Ronaldo's going to be happy. Good lad. Okay, quick ones. Little fun ones that we always do. Did you have a favourite driver growing up? Because mine was this chap up here, Mr. Mansell. This was my guy.
Yeah. Fellow Brummie.
Yes, exactly.
Favorite driver, like, so obviously my dad was a huge Schumacher supporter, but like
Sure.
I always looked up to John Surtees. Actually, like I just thought, like, it just blew my mind that he managed to do it on 2 and 4 wheels, and I guess because we knew him personally, that was always really cool. But then, like, it's funny, like, actually even in my GT career, like, I feel like I look up to Bernd Schneider because, like, some of the stories that he tells you, like, and he's so down to earth. He's such a cool character.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, asking him, like, oh, when did you come to the Nurburgring for the first time? And he was like, oh, it was like 1985 or something. And then I was like, that was 3 years before I was born. And he was like, oh my God. So you got to be kidding me. And like, we were racing together in 2016. Like, it's just mad that that's
Wow.
when
Yeah.
he first went there. And, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, yeah, I guess like in Formula One, it was Schumacher because that's who my dad supported. And so it's who I followed in my dad's footsteps with supporting him. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's some incredible drivers out there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Have you got a favourite car that you've raced? I'm going to assume it might be a Merc, but I'm gonna. Yeah. Have you got a favourite one that you've driven?
So
Right.
I used to love racing the Mercedes SLS. I think that was like the perfect GT3 car because they were built like tanks and they were bulletproof and user friendly. Like the thing is, modern day cars have got more and more sensitive and I guess lighter because of all the carbon and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes for some of the Pro-Am stuff, like some of the modern cars are a little bit too sensitive. But um, I I've raced like some of the classics that I've raced. Like as a kid, my dream car as a kid was a Ford GT40,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
from the love of Gran Turismo and
Yeah.
having it on there. And I'm lucky that every now and again I get to do stuff with Le Mans Coupes and Ollie Holm. He builds them, the super performance GT Ford GTs and. The GT40s, and so I get to drive them every now and again, and they are beautiful to drive. On a long journey, they're a little bit too loud, like, but just as cool factor, they are cool. But sadly, I can't get one to fit in my garage because, of course, you got to open the door fully to get it all to get
Yeah.
out
You
of the
need.
thing. But
Yeah.
no, the Merc, obviously loved racing the Merc. I would love to have a go in like a prototype of some kind. Like I've done a little bit in LMP3. I had the opportunity to test an LMP2, but unfortunately I was just there as a second driver for the day, and the guy I was looking after, he wasn't happy with his seat by the time he got his seat made. I had to go to my next race. I never even got to drive the thing, which I was gutted about.
Shame.
And so, yeah, I'd love to have a go in something like that. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay, this might be a silly question, but what's your favourite circuit?
So, right, so I've got 2 answers to this. Obviously, the
Okay.
Nurburgring is by far the best track in the world. So I recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to go there, they should.
Yes.
And then in America, I think I really love VIR. And I think it's because I've always gone pretty well there. Like, you always love the circuits you do well at. So, like, of course, in the UK, I always loved Alton Park, Rockingham, Thruxton, because those tracks I always seem to like just get there and not wipe the floor. But like Formula Renault, like had loads of success there, and then even in GT cars and Silverstone in GT cars, I just seem to feel like I'm able to really hook up a good qualifying lap there. So like with ABBA racing, like I ended up quickest in the pros 2 or 3 years in a row, which I was really happy with. And so, but yeah, VIR is one that I like, and then within Europe. Like naturally, everyone says Spa, but like, but I prefer Spa when it had the slightly older tarmac. They've re-tarmacked it recently.
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel like,
bit greener.
especially in the wet, it's lost a little bit of its character now.
Okay.
Because, but that happens when they re-tarmac a circuit. Same with the Nurburgring. Actually, I think it's a real shame. Every year they re-tarmac the Nurburgring or section of it to make it better and safer. But it takes out the little bumps, and like, of course, because I've been there since 2011. I know where, like, in the wet, all these little advantages are, and even in the dry, whereas now, because it gets smoother and smoother and faster, it almost takes a little bit of the challenge out of it. And I think they've just done the same with Spa a little bit. Like the new tarmac is prone to aquaplaning a bit more because it's almost too smooth.
Yeah, I think they've done the same at Laguna Seca in the last year. I think they retarmacked it.
Yeah, but I think there's quite a lot of sand at Laguna Seca, so maybe that will lose its grip quicker because I think circuits have a lot of sand and stuff tend to like evolve into a different state differently compared to European circuits.
I was going to say, I mean, okay, two more before we shoot off. Is there one series you'd love to have a go in? I get the feeling it might be sort of, in like the WEC and the hypercar. I have a feeling it might be that, but
obviously I'd love an opportunity to do something like that. But actually, I think I'd love to have a go in like Super GT in Japan. I think something like that would be really cool. Oh, have we frozen? Oh no. Oh no, okay. I don't know how much you heard. We were talking about what championship I'd love to do. I'd love to obviously do something like WEC, but I'd really love to do something like Super GT in Japan. I think that would be really cool, especially in the GT500s. Are they still going the GT500s? Because the GT300 is the GT3 car.
Yes.
But I think I got to race with some of the Japanese guys a few years ago at Spa, and so I'd love to do something like that. I think that'd be really cool over there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Very cool. Cool series. Okay, last one. You've shared the track with a load of many great drivers, and I've just got some of them here. Guys like Rene Rast and and guys like Maro and Peter Dunbrack and Hurley Haywood you shared the track with, and Frank Beeler, and even guys earlier on like Connor Daly, with Catherine and Ben Barnacle, all these guys. Gianmaria Bruni, I had him on. Love Jimmy. He's a good guy. Memo Gidley and Ranger van der Zande Collado and Fisher Keller and Schneider, Blundell, Brundle, Jimmy Johnson, Frank Kitty, Scott Dixon, Scott Pruitt. All these guys. I mean, some very, very cool guys. I mean, Scott Pruitt is the man around Daytona. We know.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that kind of sticks out in your mind as maybe not being the best, but just being someone that you just admire for the way they go about their racing or anything like
that? To be honest, I always appreciate and wish I knew how they did it, but all the British touring car guys, I'd love to know how they unlock all the sponsorship to be able to go racing and stuff, because
it's getting tough.
That's always one area I feel like I've always sucked at a bit, and so it's something that actually I've worked with one or two people in the past and not had great experiences trying to generate sponsorship, but just kind of looking into that section a little bit at the moment with someone to see whether we can do something like that. But
cool.
So I always admire those guys that are able to generate the few £100,000 sponsorship that's needed, because it's a part that I guess I've always struggled with. But I don't know. I think it's cool that all the guys that I raced at, like Daniel Rowbottom, it's just been mentioned by Sandro in the comments. That I remember that karting event where you could buy laps, and so to win the race, and it was all for a good cause, to go to charity and stuff. There's, I don't know. You always look at all the big successful drivers in everything you're racing, and just look at them and just think, it's just cool that somehow we get to do this as a job. As a kid, it's a completely made up job, and I still look at it now as a completely made up job. But somehow I managed to pay the bills with it, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, which is fantastic, and I think that's probably the perfect tone on which to end. I mean, apologies to keep you so long. I mean, we said about an hour and a half, and
I feel like I kept you. I feel like I'm the one that's been doing more.
I am more than happy to sit here for a long time and have a chat about a lot of motorsport. But I mean, it's been brilliant, and obviously we can tell how much you love doing what you're doing, and you've driven some amazing cars and some fantastic series. And again, apologies for shouting after you at Goodwood.
No. I'm glad you did, and in the end, that's how. I guess you got to shoot your shot with some of these. Otherwise, you're obviously constantly getting people on, and from the list that you've got, you've managed to get some incredible names on here, and so. Without, I
still don't quite know how it's not.
Without being like that, you wouldn't have the amount of people online. So no, it's been a pleasure being on here. Yeah,
No.
I'm glad you asked, and it's been fun answering the questions.
No, good stuff. No, great stuff. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I also do appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, in the comments and everything. There's been loads of you tuning in tonight, which is lovely. Thank you very much for your support and everything. As you know, we'll be announcing another one tomorrow. Thank you for your support. Thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next week. But for now, take care. All the best. And Adam, once again, thank you very much.